Shouldn't be said. It is not right. A woman is an adult female, and the court has made that absolutely clear. I actually welcome the judgment because I think it gives real clarity. It allows those that have got to draw up guidance to be really clear about what that guidance should say. If you want to fight for Remain, vote Labour. Now, there are some who say we don't need Brexit to work. We need to reverse it. I couldn't disagree more. Day after day, there are new allegations of sleaze, of favours, of privileged access. And it's all very well the Prime Minister saying, well, now, well, I'm paying for it.
You've decided to repay £6,000 worth of gifts.
Lord Ali is facing an investigation. I wonder how concerned you are that your biggest donor was not fully transparent.
Are you saying you made a mistake?
It was right for me to make those repayments. Thank you. Of course, I wouldn't want Donald Trump round for dinner, but don't underestimate the danger to the world if Trump is re-elected this time around. I'm anti-Trump. I would like to send my warmest congratulations to President Trump on his inauguration as the 47th President of the United States.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning and welcome to Morning Glory. Coming up to 3 minutes past 6. It's a glorious Monday morning, the 11th of August, and it's going to be an absolutely beautiful day, ladies and gentlemen. We've got lots and lots of news for you as well, ranging from apparently Bridget Phillipson, the Education Secretary, believing that white working class kids are being written off. Oh, really? Well, you're the Education Secretary. Sort it out. There's 150,000 social care migrants who have been lost. Nobody knows where they are. They came in on social care visas and now they've disappeared. 13 freezing migrants were found in the back of a lorry over the weekend as well. They seem to be okay. They're all from Eritrea, where it's a lot hotter than it is here, and they nearly got killed by trying to smuggle themselves here in a lorry. What it tells you is a lot more of them are still coming on lorries. We've got stories about foreign prisoners being deported without going to jail. That's apparently what they're going to do. And also, we're spending something like £5 million on buying a load of clothing for people in prison, including pyjama bottoms, pyjama tops, jogging bottoms, underwear, bras. I mean, I don't know about you, but it seems like an awful lot of money. And we're giving it all to some Chinese company who are going to supply all this stuff for people to wear while they're in prison. The Chagos Islands deal, how about that? That's on the front page of the Daily Telegraph, in which apparently Starmer hid the cost, the true cost of the Chagos Islands surrender. He said it was going to be £3.5 billion. It turns out he was wrong by a factor of 10. It's going to be £30 billion plus to send the Chagos Islands away from the British Isles. So goodness knows why Keir Starmer lied to us, but he absolutely did. Labour is driving unrest, according to a piece in The Sun by Matt Goodwin. And also, we're going to be taking the stock of what's been going on with Yvette Cooper, because, of course, you might remember Yvette Cooper said that she was going to give us regular updates on the migrants that she was arresting. It started last week. So far, we haven't really heard much, so we'll try and keep you upbeat about that as well. 0344 499 1000. The Daily Mirror goes with the Prince Andrew story. Apparently, Shane Prince Andrew believes it may never be safe to return to the United States. What's he frightened of? Apparently the legal and political storm that awaits him. Oh, well, maybe he shouldn't have been hanging around with the paedophile. Rafe Heidelmann-Koo is here with us. Very good morning to you, Rafe. Good to see you. We've got loads to report on, loads to do. Let us get it on. Oh, Jurgen's been up and about in Scotland as well. We'll tell you what he's been doing with GB Energy. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. And a very good morning to you. 5 minutes past 6. The sun is shining brightly in the sky, and it's going to be a lovely day today. Rafe, how are you? Nice to see you.
Very well. Glorious day, as you say. Hard not to be in anything other than a good mood, but we'll see how the next hour
Well, let's see how it goes, yeah, because there's quite a lot. Of course, we've got Friday to look forward to in the Trump-Putin summit, which is going to take place in Alaska. I said to somebody, presumably because they can both walk there, which is one of the easier places to meet up with. But a lot of migrant stories around today. Front page of The Sun, which I haven't mentioned yet, has got "Dinghy migrants get dinghy days out," which is one of the more curious headlines of the day. Migrants arriving on small boats are being offered cut-price dinghy days out funded by taxpayers. You know, as if they haven't been on a dinghy before.
Dinghy leisure classes and windsurfing. If there were two things I would suspect migrants don't want to do, having scaled the choppy waters of the Channel, it's getting back into that nightmare situation.
Yes, you would think not, but of course in pages 4 and 5 they've got the sort of the full menu, if you like, of all the freebies from different councils. Rotherham Council, dinghy boat hire, gyms, swimming, tennis, squash, athletics, hot drinks. These are all things that they get a discount card for. Calderdale Council, they can get massage, physiotherapy, yoga classes, crazy golf, IMAX tickets. I mean, what is going on in this country? Who comes up with this rubbish?
It's absolutely outrageous, particularly because these discounts are larger than our own armed forces get, than our own pensioners get.
Yeah.
And if you really wanted to create more division in society, this is precisely how you do it. People are already feeling that migrants are getting a good deal. And here, even in my own borough council, they're getting half price on civil partnerships.
Yeah.
I don't know how many migrants are actually gay coming over here on these things, but also they're giving them swimming lessons. I'm terribly sorry. I'm pretty sure the British public don't want migrants now hanging out in swimming pools.
Right. Also, shouldn't they give them swimming lessons before they get on the dinghies to cross the Channel? Maybe they should set that
before the horse.
Yeah, set that up in Calais and have the swimming lessons in Calais. Let the French bloody pay for it.
And they're giving them martial arts classes. Now, call me old-fashioned. I don't really want young men of fighting age being taught hand-to-hand combat in the streets here, let alone being given e-scooters, you know. And, of course, we've had a huge,
everything half price.
A huge increase in the number of mobile phone thefts and everything else on e-scooters. And we're sort of equipping them with all that they need to get ahead in life.
I know, it is extraordinary. Another story they've got on that particular spread. The first migrant to be convicted of illegally working for Deliveroo since the Sun's probe has been fined. You'll be pleased to know. The bad news is he's only been fined £26. Abdullah Merez, 23, admitted working when disqualified by immigration status. He was caught in Woking on May the 7th, but apparently he said he was in debt and he's a first-time offender, so he just has to pay the victim surcharge at the minimum, 26 quid.
The whole thing is a farce.
2 hours pay if you work for Deliveroo.
You know, we keep saying that we need to make Britain less attractive than France. If you're getting free scooters and martial arts class swimming, you just get a slap on the wrist when you're caught actually flouting the law and working when you're not supposed to be working. Where is the disincentive to come over here?
Well, yeah, exactly right. And of course, you know, at the back end of last week, we were told, were we not, by Starmer and Yvette Cooper, that this is now the beginning of the crackdown on illegal migration, that they're going to start arresting people. And they told us, in fact, I think it was a Friday, that they'd arrested the first people, and they did this very elaborate video which looked very menacing of how they'd like rounded up what looked like about 15 people and put them in a room together and were sort of fingerprinting them and whatever. Let's check in with Yvette Cooper and let's see what she had to say on Friday.
Well, we'll provide regular updates for the public at every stage. That's why I'm confirming today that the pilot has now started and the first migrants who arrived on the small boat are now in detention. The transfers to immigration removal centres are underway as we speak, so we won't provide operational details at this point that criminal gangs can simply use and exploit.
Yeah. So we're going to get regular updates, right? That was Friday. I don't think we've had one since, have we? Anybody?
Well, we have irregular migration. Maybe it's irregular updates.
It's irregular updates.
We're going to be having now.
It is exactly right.
But she's hiding behind the coattails of the police there, saying, well, we can't give you any details. It's absolute nonsense. And because they're too embarrassed by the numbers they're dealing about, you know, only 50 people going back on the one-in, one-out system on migrant returns, a handful of people done here. They're not getting serious. This is all performative to try to get headlines and try and pull the wool over the British public eyes and make them think that things are being done.
Well, sounding tough. I mean, Keir Starmer kept putting out all these, you know, I meant it. I said I would crack down on this. I meant it. I'm going to go after them. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. You know, he's doing absolute square root of sweet FA. There's nothing changing. 435 migrants arrived on Saturday alone, right? So we haven't even got a figure from yesterday. I was down at the coast yesterday with the dog, you know, keeping an eye out.
Doing your bit for King of Country.
There was a lot of people paddle boarding around. I'm pretty sure they'd started in Britain, and so they weren't actually coming from France. But, you know, it was like a mill pond, the channel. I mean, because on those kind of days, it's so calm. So there'll probably be about another 400 odd. So we're getting dangerously close to 50,000 now since Keir Starmer's been in office as Prime Minister, which is a large number of people. It's a good-sized town in Britain, and that's just the ones we know about.
Yeah, to put it into context, that's the number of people we used to get annually net in the 1990s legally.
Yes.
So that's the total number of legal migrants in the 90s. We're now getting that illegally. It just goes to show you there is no deterrent. It's all tough talk. This idea of smashing the gangs was never going to work from the outset. We warned that in advance. We weren't listened to. Rwanda wasn't ideal, but at least it was working to a degree. It was a deterrent of some sort. There are drastic actions to be taken. I don't know whether we're going to be speaking about it later, but the island of Crete has been able to reduce boats to zero.
Well, I mean, I mentioned this a few weeks ago when they announced that they were putting a halt to all asylum-seeking claims for the rest of the foreseeable future, and they've managed to build a detention centre, and they report in the Sun today, don't they, that they've stopped all boats arriving.
And this is done by left-wingers. This is not even done by right-wingers, as in Denmark as well. And they're quite simple. They've simply suspended the asylum process. We are not going to give you asylum status. We're going to arrest you and put you in prison. Why? Because you are illegal. You are an illegal criminal.
And you will never be able to... Then they will be escorted back to North Africa from whence they came by a military sort of, you know, carousel of boats or whatever. So there's going to be no chance that they get to stay in Europe. And that's what the whole of Europe has to do, and including Britain, by the way.
Yeah, and 4 weeks ago they had 200 boats coming over. In the last 2 weeks they've had 0 boats coming over because of this process. They're not using terms like irregular migrants. They're saying you are illegal, you are criminals, you need to go. This is what the reforms also, Farage has also supported, as well as using offshore processing centres like Australia did with the island of Nauru. The solutions are there for picking. This is not rocket science, it's common sense. The problem is our governments, Tory and Labour alike, have been too lily-livered to do what needs to be done.
Yes, they absolutely have. And just double-checking on Yvette Cooper's Twitter account, Home Secretary and Labour MP for Pontefract, Castleford and Nottingley. We will be giving regular updates, she said, as we just heard her saying. Her last tweet was 3 days ago, on Friday, funnily enough, which was when we had the last update. I don't think that's a regular update for me, I'm sorry to say. But so many different stories around about the migrants from one section of the papers to another. Telegraph has got this story that ministers have lost track of more than 150,000 migrants who came to the UK on social care visas. The government has admitted it has no idea how many workers hired to plug gaps in Britain's crisis-hit social care system are still in the sector, and it's not even known if they're still in Britain.
This is absolutely appalling, and it's you know, this has been going on for years. Actually, we don't simply know what happens to people when they're here on visas. It's remarkable in this digital age that this is allowed to happen. We also don't know whether they're still in the country. Have they left the country? Because we're not doing checks on people when they leave.
Well, this is what I've always said. You know, when we look at the net migration figures and we try to estimate how many more people are living here than there were, the measurements are so inaccurate that it's almost impossible to get a true figure, isn't it?
Yeah, and you just think at this stage, after so many years of understanding the scale of the problem we're facing, you would think they would try to close these loopholes. It can't be that difficult to actually record visa data, give them their own, you know, we talk about having national ID cards. There should be ID cards for all of these people linked to something. I think leaving the country, they have to use them to get out of the country. I just find this thing absolutely indefensible, and it's not just a, you know, a stain on Labour, because this also happened under the Tories
of
as
course.
well.
Yeah, and we also know, because we've seen it happening before our very eyes, that so many people come to this country on worker visas like this and then overstay the visa or get married or disappear into the undergrowth of the black economy. We also know it happens with people coming here on student visas. So many of those people are now in migrant hotels because they've basically overstayed their visa and are claiming asylum.
This is the big thing. So we always focus on the small boats. Actually, more numbers come for people overstaying their visa and then magically claiming asylum.
Right.
It's a complete Ponzi scheme. It's a complete farce. It's absolutely corrupt. Let's also say many of them here are under false pretenses. They come here on social care visas for bogus social care places that don't actually exist.
Right.
Or they apply to ridiculous schools which don't actually provide them with any decent education, and they know full well they're simply just paying to get into the country with no intention of studying in this country.
Yeah, and another story from the weekend that we can bring to you, which was in the Sun over the weekend. 13 freezing UK-bound migrants found trapped in a fridge lorry after the driver heard them screaming for help near Calais. This is a load of Eritreans who apparently clambered into the back of a truck, not realising that it was obviously a refrigerated truck, and they got stuck in there. And luckily they were rescued before they all died of hypothermia. But they were found near a rest area on the A26 motorway, 45 miles from Calais. But it shows you, does it not, that this hasn't stopped. That, you know, the practice of jumping onto the back of a lorry and becoming and getting to Britain that way is still happening. It may be to a lesser extent than the boats, but it's still going on.
It's still going on. I mean, one of the reasons the boat numbers increased was because we were getting very good, actually, at stopping the numbers of people coming over on lorries. But there's another thing here. You know, Eritrea tops the list. It's in the top 10 list of most offences of sexual crimes, violent crimes. Yeah. Eritrea is right at the top of that list. They're also at the top of the list of people coming over here at the same time. Yes. We have to get to the point where we say, look, we know the worst 20 countries for offenders. We don't want anyone from those countries coming over.
Just block them.
Donald Trump Jr. said once, you know, if I gave you a bowl of M&Ms and told you that a few of them were poisonous, would you take a handful of them? Right. I'm sorry, we've got to get to the point now where we say we're not taking asylum applications from any of these countries.
Yeah. I remember telling a story some months ago, and I always repeat it, of a sort of street fight that went on in Sheffield. This was probably several months ago, and it was two gangs of Eritreans, basically, one lot who were sort of pro the government and one lot who were anti the government, fighting on the streets of Britain. And you're thinking, sorry, there's something wrong with this picture. What is going on? Let them fight in the streets of Eritrea, surely.
Look, I said enough is enough. I've said so many times, we need to get Europe and the UN needs to get together, abolish the 1951 Convention on Refugees. That was created for the post-war world in terms of dealing with Jews and Slav Poles, where to put them in. No one expected these huge transcontinental migration patterns to happen. We should have a new convention. If you're fleeing places like Eritrea or Sudan, you go elsewhere in Africa. You're fleeing Vietnam, you go elsewhere in Asia. You're fleeing Ukraine, you come to Europe. We should only have refugees rehoused within their continent of origin because their culture really matters. They're going to be more at home, more assimilated if they have a similar culture and religion to those around them. And also you want to have them physically close to where they came from, because the idea is they're not here permanently. The idea is for them to go home when things are safe. Yeah. The closer they are, the more likely they'll go back home.
Exactly right. And the Mail have got a graph in the paper today on their page 6 in which it says that the figures of these boat arrivals have soared since Labour came to power last July. And in fact, in June and July of this year, it's the two highest months for travel on illegal small boats, somewhere almost reaching 6,000 per month. Obviously, August is uncalculated at the moment. This year so far has been the worst in history for illegal immigrants across the Channel. Labour has lost control of our borders. Every illegal immigrant needs to be removed immediately. But this government is too weak to do that. That's from Chris Philp, the Shadow Home Secretary. Nigel Farage posted a video which showed migrants chanting Allahu Akbar as they apparently crossed the English Channel. He's calling it a national security emergency, which it is.
It is. Well, it has been a national security emergency for years. This is the problem, you know. As I said, enough is enough. Only Europeans should be given asylum within Europe. We have to draw a line.
No question at all. And also, of course, an awful lot of coverage of the various rallies that happened over the course of the weekend. They were happening outside the Britannia in Canary Wharf, outside Epping, once again, the Bell Hotel, which still seems to be housing migrants, despite the fact the pleas from the locals to remove them. And also, there was another case of a migrant being, I think, arrested, not charged thus far, with an offence in a migrant hotel in London, in the Barbican, I think it is. Let me find it here for you. Migrant in a taxpayer-funded London hotel accused of strangling a 20-year-old woman. You know, every single week now there's at least one to 5 of these, asylum seeker offences being committed. People are sick to the back teeth of it.
And it should be no surprise, we've got the data out. My think tank, New Culture Forum, we put out a whole documentary with Alex Phillips hosting it about immigration and the rise in rape. You know, Afghans 22 times more likely to commit this. But also, people are coming over, have much higher levels of mental illness. You're not surprised, given what they've been through in their homeland as well, the trauma that they've been through. And, you know, we don't talk enough about the fact that many of the atrocities we've had committed in this country, the Manchester Arena bombing, Southport, etc., were the children of asylum seekers. It's not just the asylum seekers. People tend to think, oh, once their kids are born here, they're all Welsh choir boys, everything's hunky-dory. No, I'm sorry. The stuff carries on down the generations.
It does. Let's remind ourselves again of this transit van video. This is one they put out on Friday, again, supposedly to make it look as if they should all be trembling with fear because of the incredibly brilliant Keir Starmer government rounding people up. Check this out. I mean, it's not very clear what they're trying to tell you there. They've got a little minivan, which we've got 3 people get out of it, carrying their belongings in a blue plastic bag and go into another room. Doesn't exactly look like Alcatraz, does it?
No, and quite frankly, when you've left the conditions that they've been living in Africa, where essentially they're living in much worse conditions than that.
Even in northern France.
Or even in northern France, in the old, Calais Sangate, or whatever it is. Yeah. That's actually not bad. That's sort of like a nice taxi service in London. That's how I came to the studio this morning.
I know, without the blue plastic bag. You can take one of those away. Morning, Mike. We want the UK to be a holiday destination for those who pay and contribute to the economy, not for a bunch of migrants. It's like an all-inclusive hotel for life, says Mark in Croydon. And one here from a disgruntled UK-born citizen. If we are providing cinema tickets, the question is why? They claim they can't speak or understand English, so are we providing them with the translated version of the film as well? It's a joke. Every day just keeps on giving. When I thought I had heard the best of it, it just keeps on giving. Let's get a voice note from Clifford.
Morning, Mike. Great show. Clifford from Devon. So you're telling me that all of these people are getting all this free stuff, yet I am struggling to find stuff for my kids to do in the holidays. Disgusting.
Yeah, absolutely right. Because any parent knows you try and get anything to do for your kids, which ends up that you have to pay for. It's an absolute bleeding fortune. You have to spend an absolute king's ransom just to take them to some kind of theme park, take them on some kind of ride. The prices have all gone up, and these characters are not only jumping in the queue in front of you, they're getting it for half price. Brilliant. 22 minutes past 6.
Oxford Street, which is the prime kind of shopping destination for London, huge attraction for tourists and Londoners alike, and yet here we go, private business having to warn people that actually it's not safe to have your phone out while you're walking along there shopping, whatever you're doing. Crime everywhere is a big problem, we know that, but in London in particular we have the consequences of some very clear political choices by this mayor, and that's what's making it worse. He says that keeping Londoners safe is his #1 priority, but his budget simply doesn't follow that.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 24 minutes past 6. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through, of course, until 10 o'clock. Rafe Heidemann-Q is here with us. One from Carol here, who says, Mike, do you think when we reach the 50,000th migrant, maybe we could give them some kind of certificate or some kind of prize, just like when we would do it for the millionth customer of a big supermarket? You know, maybe make a big fuss of them. I wouldn't put it past this government. Thanks, Carol. She's out cleaning since the early hours for a living. Yeah, well, this is the thing. Many people are out working very early doors, 6:25 this morning. There'll be loads of you out there. Yes, the summer holidays are on. Yes, some people have to look after their children. But most people who are worth anything in this country are out actually working or preparing to get to work. And they get sick to death of reading about all of this free stuff that people are getting. But let's just take a little detour away, because it's Monday morning. Some of you may or may not be aware that Nicola Sturgeon, the former First Minister of Scotland, has got a new book out in which she talks about all manner of things, including getting arrested, including her sort of controversial personal life with her husband, of course, who's still under investigation, has been charged in all sorts of different ways in Scotland. We can't talk too much about him. And about rumours surrounding her sexuality. Here she is talking about being arrested.
You described Sunday, June the 11th, worst day of your life. You're arrested. You have to attend a police station. You're there for hours. To go from First Minister, this lauded female politician, to walking into a police station for questioning. How was that?
Horrific. I think part of me just closed down.
Yeah, horrific. I guess it was horrific. Here she is on her husband's arrest.
What was it like when you saw Peter being led away?
I don't really have a clear memory of that, because I think I'd gone upstairs to kind of get myself ready, and so I don't really...
But the idea of him being taken out of your family home
so
by the police...
I don't know, and I genuinely don't know whether the fact that I don't have a clear image of that in my head is because I didn't witness it, or that I have kind of somehow blocked it out. It wasn't until I got to my mum and dad's that I saw the pictures of my house looking like a murder scene, effectively.
Looked like a murder scene. It did. You remember when they had that sort of, you know, that tent outside?
There's been a murder.
And there's been a murder, and all these kind of forensic suited people wandering in and out. And at one point, people thought they were digging in the garden.
I know, it was terrible.
It was all very weird. Now here she is talking about her sexuality, which still seems to be, you know, a subject of some consternation.
You write in the book, I have never considered sexuality, mine own included, to be binary. What do you mean by that?
I mean what it says. It's just my view of the world and life and the way people are. If you're about to ask me, am I making some big revelation? No. Am I putting labels on myself? No. That's how I see the world.
Might we see you in a relationship with a woman?
Look, I'm just out of a marriage, so I'm not rushing into a relationship with anyone anytime soon. I'm enjoying being my own person for a while.
But not ruling it out?
I'm not contemplating, you know, sort of anything of that nature. I'm just enjoying life.
She's spending a lot of time with Val McDermott. Who knows? I mean, I suppose who cares, really?
Yeah, who cares? Really matter. It's just, in a way, it's a shame if, you know, that she still doesn't feel comfortable enough revealing or talking about it.
Yeah.
We don't know the details of it. Maybe that's why they had a caravan at the front garage in the place. There were 3 in this marriage, as Diana said. Who knows what it is?
Very possibly so.
It's up to them to talk about it whenever they feel happy.
But, I mean, the overarching kind of view that I'm getting from people in Scotland is that, you know, she was, you know, at one point this kind of all-powerful, very, very sort of well-respected woman leader at the time when Jacinda Ardern was talked about as being this amazing woman in New Zealand. And they've all kind of blown it, haven't they? They've all just completely screwed it up.
But it also came with this arrogance, with this sense of moral superiority, this judging, condescending tone for people that they didn't think lived up to their moral, righteous levels.
Oh, yeah. Well, do you remember during COVID, when she heard sort of every day she would wake up and go, what can I do now to screw up Boris Johnson and make sure I get something out announced? Yeah. before he does.
And the foul smell they were smelling whenever they had to mention the word Nigel Farage or Reform or the Tories or Jacob Rees-Mogg or whatever. And of course you have to remember, for a long time Scotland was not only a one-party SNP state, but the Scottish media were hand in glove with them.
Yes.
You know, the national newspaper,
sure.
all of this stuff. And they just regarded themselves as essentially as, you know, that their number twos didn't smell at all. And so there was certainly, I think, a lot of it was a great deal of schadenfreude around this in terms of the public reaction to it. You know, pride comes before a fall, as they say.
Yeah, and it was a hell of a fall, wasn't it, in the end? And it was all the way to the bottom, which is where she still is. And I mean, don't forget, these are the same people who thought it was a really good idea to saw the bottom off the doors of classrooms in order to create a ventilation so that they wouldn't all die from a disease that wasn't going to kill them anyway.
And just remember, of course, we now know that was the worst thing ever we could have done, was to put, you know, the children and young people of, you know, who were of working age, who wouldn't get affected in any real way by COVID, and destroy the economy. And nobody was more gung-ho than the Scots when it came to all of that, when we should have just been protecting the elderly and those with
Well, do you remember at one point they were talking about sort of erecting some kind of border, so that, you know, a proper border, so that people could not travel from England into Scotland? You know, that's how mad it got.
Secession by the back door.
Yeah,
COVID to get independence.
Yeah, exactly right. Let's talk about the front page of the Daily Mail. 26,000 prisoners freed early by Labour. Labour has freed over 26,000 criminals early, including hundreds of serious offenders who were handed sentences of more than a decade behind bars. This has all gone a bit without anybody knowing about it, hasn't it?
This is an outrageous story, you know, 26,000. But this includes, you know, it's one thing if you're letting out people with the most minor offences to free up space for hardened criminals.
Yeah.
But there are hundreds of people who've been released who have been sentenced to 10, 14 years in prison.
Yeah.
Nobody is sentenced to 7, 10 or 14 years in prison unless they are the worst sort of serial offenders.
Right.
We're told it doesn't include murderers, but we do know it includes domestic abusers.
Yes.
We do know that some people committing sexual offences have been included in these numbers. Now imagine if you are the ex-wife of one of or the ex-partner of one of these people, or somebody who has been sexually assaulted in some capacity.
Yeah.
How would you be feeling knowing that these people are back on the streets? Also, you know, the police, how demoralising it is for the police to go through all the efforts to get these people arrested, go through all the process, only for them to walk out having served a pittance of their sentence with a smirk on their face. I think it's extremely worrying, extremely damaging. We know what needs to be done, of course, which they are trying to do, is get rid of the foreign nationals. If you did that, you could free up space without having to release these dangerous people. But here's another idea. How about all those old age pensioners, all those carers who've been arrested and imprisoned for retweeting a limerick? Why don't you release those people back on the streets, perhaps?
That might actually be more sensible. But this is the problem, isn't it? Because a lot of the plans to release people from prison who are foreign nationals is also to not send people to prison who are foreign nationals now. So what the idea is that if you are a foreign criminal and you commit a crime, you go to trial, you get found guilty, you don't even go to prison, you just get deported. Now, that might sound good on the face of it, but for a lot of people that will mean you can't guarantee that they actually get punished. They might get sent back to their home nation, and before long they might be coming back on a small boat and they'll be back in here.
Yeah, well, I mean, as long as they're out of the country, I think many people would say better that we're not having to fund or pay them. But the question is, why would a country like India, for example, or others, why would they want to take hardened criminals back into the country?
Right.
People need to understand, just because you have a Somali passport or whatever, doesn't mean you're given the guaranteed right of entry back into that country.
No.
Those countries need to decide, if you are a risk to this nation, we can say, no, we don't want you to come back into this country. Also, a lot of this is grandstanding by the Labour government. Yes, it sounds wonderful, we're going to deport all these foreign criminals. Actually, you haven't reversed the Human Rights Act.
No.
You've still tied our government and our law system into the European Court of Human Rights, and you created the Human Rights Act under Tony Blair and Gordon Brown. Thank you very much. So there's every reason that these people will just make an application for asylum as soon as you try to deport them.
Right.
And if they're here for more than 3 months, then countries won't be taking them back. We know.
Right. Well, this is another takes us back to this, you know, ridiculously called one in, one out scheme, which, as I've said before, you might as well call it the Jack and Ori scheme. Just give it any name you like, because it certainly isn't one in, one out. But the French can also refuse to take back anyone that we've decided to reject. So of these people that they supposedly have detained since Friday, and we still don't know really where they're being detained or for how long or when, what's going to happen to them. You know, if, for example, Yvette Cooper decides that they want to deport these people, they will, as you say, have representation from lawyers. Lawyers will be able to say, we have a right to life, and so we want to stay. And even if they get through all of that, which could take a year, the French can say, well, we don't want them.
Well,
and then we're stuck with them.
If they've been here for 3 months, the French don't take them back.
No.
So that's all they have to do. Get a lawyer, and then after 3 months they'll say, oh, I'm sorry. And if the French decide that they are not only a risk to the EU, but if they say that they're a risk to the UK, they don't have to take them back.
It's hard to believe that they could be this useless, isn't it?
You have to laugh, but actually it's so ridiculous and so say we are at an existential crisis in this country, and we have a bunch of nincompoops trying to sort it out.
Yeah. How about this from Chris in Buckinghamshire? He says, "Good morning, Mike. My father was Latvian and came to the UK in 1947 as a displaced person. Every year he was checked up on by the police, and it only stopped when he married my mother." Yeah, well, you know, there was a way of keeping track of people in those days, but now, because of the numbers, there simply isn't really a way of keeping track of them, and that is part of the problem. 6:35. Coming up, we'll tell you about why people who keep photos of shoplifters in their shops might be breaking data protection laws. GB Energy and Jürgen have been out and about in the Highlands, and also we'll talk about this Palestinian protest at the weekend where more than 500 people were arrested, and they've now all been said to be terrorists, so that's going to skew the terrorism arrests, isn't it? Because last year I think we only arrested 258 terrorists. Now there's a bunch of old 60-year-old duffers who want to free Palestine, and they're all now being described as terrorists, which doesn't sound very sensible to me. This is Morning Glory. Back after this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 6:37. I'm Mike Graham. Mike, the first message ever that I've sent to Talk, says Martin. I love watching your show. My honest opinion now, I'm not anti-immigration at all, is that we should just call a state of national emergency and start saying no one illegally entering is staying. I actually think defying these international laws would be respected by many people across the world and see that the UK has grown a pair again. Well, I think that's right, Martin, absolutely right. Well, front page of the Daily Express today, Rafe, this will shock people. Entire streets are being lined up to accommodate asylum seekers only, according to Reform Council chiefs. 12 have told this story to the Home Office that contractors are sweeping up properties in our most deprived communities. Ministers have set aside £500 million for a more sustainable accommodation model than hotels.
This makes me so angry. This is what I was warning would happen, because my great fear has been that the Labour Party are going to close down all the migrant hotels and say, right, we've done it, problem solved. Well, actually, no. It's one thing to have migrants on a 4-star golf course on the outskirts of town. It's another to actually kick them out of there and move them right next door to you.
Yes.
Put them in HMOs, put them in buildings of flats opposite primary schools, right next to your whole family. That's going to ramp up tensions even more when actually they're hanging around your suburban street rather than just city centres.
Because I said this last week, you know, if you're moving people out of hotels where they're being given everything for free, like, for example, all the food that they get is free, you know, whether they've got access to gyms and all of that, then you presumably have to replicate that lifestyle while they live in a privately run a piece of accommodation. So do you buy them food? Do you give them money to buy food? How does that work?
You just hire them to become delivery drivers, and they'll be delivering to their mates all day long. Problem solved.
Sort of cross
it's a nice
delivery.
little circle there.
But seriously, I mean, you must have to give them. You must have to give them that same standard of living, because you can't just give them a house and nothing else, can you?
The fact is, you need to make this country less attractive. That includes not only, cutting down on all those sorts of freebies that they're getting, emptying not just the hotels, all of the private accommodation needs to be emptied of migrants, and they need to be put into temporary refugee camps until they can be deported. People must remember, and they'll get their 3 meals a day in these camps.
Yeah.
Remember this: after the Second World War, there were 250,000 Polish refugees in this country, not just soldiers, women and children as well. My mother's cousins were part of that. They lived for 10, 15 years in these resettlement. They were called Polish resettlement camps.
They were like sort of Nissan huts.
They were
weren't
Nissan huts.
Yeah.
They were 1940s quality Nissan huts. If women and children could live in those conditions in the 40s and 50s very happily, my mum's cousins got married there after living there for 10 years.
Right.
Why are we giving 3-4-star accommodation, brand new luxury council housing to migrants who are young men of fighting age, when even our own soldiers are living in Nissan huts?
But again, it's government policy, failed government policies going all the way back to Tony Blair's days, when they decided willy-nilly to say, right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to put, because they didn't realise the numbers were going to be so huge in those days, they said, here's what we're going to do. We'll put them into these hotels. And then during COVID, it actually got worse. Because if you remember, there were plenty of times when we weren't allowed to go anywhere, and you couldn't fly out of town, you couldn't fly out of the country, you couldn't travel anywhere. The only actual travelling that was going on was the migrants crossing the channel during COVID and being welcomed by Border Force and being given masks and being brought in and put in hotels. They were the only people travelling in the world.
Look, for those people who are already here, build those camps now, put them there. That's going to be a massive deterrent. And build it up somewhere, one of the islands off the Shetlands or the Orkneys, some uninhabited islands again. Make it a clear message, a real hostile environment, not the milquetoast thing Theresa May tried to do. That's how you get to grips with all of this.
Yeah, I think there's absolutely no question about it. Let's talk about the Chagos Islands, given the other sort of, shall we say, big stories around this morning. Front page of the Daily Telegraph. Keir Starmer hid the £30 billion cost of the Chagos surrender. They're in no doubt, because he was asked, wasn't he? Because Nigel Farage continually said he believed that this deal was going to cost Britain potentially as much as £56 billion. And now the government has admitted, documents released under the Freedom of Information Act, £35 billion is the probable cost, despite the fact that Keir Starmer used to say it was 3.
This is so outrageous. I mean, in my view, this should be resignation grounds of resignation. The Speaker should haul the Prime Minister before the House of Commons to explain why he openly lied and deceived. The Labour government have been using bizarre accountancy practices, which they don't use with any other sorts of funding models when they're trying to explain what's happened, in order to downplay the amount that this has costed. And once again, this Chagos deal is completely inexplicable. It was easy for this to just be quashed. This is the Labour government putting far-left post-colonial ideology ahead of Britain's national interest. Lammy, Harmer, the Attorney General, and Starmer, they are beholden to far-left radical ideology, and now Britain's enemies around the world see the Labour Party as allies. So now you get the Argentinians sabre-rattling over the Falklands. Everyone...
Gibraltar.
Gibraltar. Now you get the Caribbean countries saying, well, we're going to ask for reparations. They see us, basically, as being sitting ducks for all of their outrageous anti-British
because we are. Because old Hermer will more than happily entertain anybody who wants to get reparations, because he believes that we owe it. And, of course, we've now got our great ally Hamas over in the Middle East, who are very grateful to Keir Starmer for saying he's going to recognise a Palestinian state. There was a big demo, actually, at the weekend, obviously by Palestine Action, but also there was a huge demo from Jewish people in this country taking a petition, I think, to Downing Street to beg Starmer, Prime Minister Starmer, if he's going to try and recognise Palestine, to get the hostages freed first.
Yeah, well, the messaging is clear, right? You launch an attack on innocent people partying in a country. You rape and murder them, and you wait a while. You stop food going to the people of your own population. Whilst you live high on the hog. and eventually you get what you wanted to get, right?
Yeah.
This is rewarding terrorism, rewarding the most vile and debased actions with their ultimate goal of state recognition.
Yeah, absolutely right. It's a shocking state of affairs. Let's talk about the Palestine protests as well, because the police are on the front page of the Times, I think, this morning, saying that it was an unrealistic task that they had to be put through because they were arrested more than 500 people, 532 people, including 15 people who are over 80, 112 people who are over 70. Most of them are in their 50s and 60s. And the overall number of arrests more than doubled the total for all terrorism-related activity last year, recorded by the Home Office, which was 248. They've sort of got themselves into a right old mess, haven't they, by making Palestine Action a terrorist organisation. You know, and I can understand why they did, because at one point, you know, there have been things that Palestine Action have done which are criminal and also could be described as terroristic, you know, attacking army bases and military installations and all that, ruining planes, whatever. But, you know, this is clearly going to end in tears, isn't it? They basically were arresting these people. There were so many of them, they had to just let them go again.
Well, that was the idea, that was the purpose. There's this organisation arranging this, something with juries about it, and they are trying to basically swamp the police in order to basically highlight this very fact.
Right.
What's so curious is, you know, I've seen all of the Palestinian marches over the last few years. Good mix of ethnic minorities and far-left radicals.
Yes.
But all the ethnic minorities disappeared when it came to this. This was simply the old vicars, the hippies and everybody else who came out to be arrested on this front. And yes, I don't think they should be considered terrorists per se, but I do think they should be arrested and charged actually for supporting Palestine Action, because that does come with consequences. They can't travel to America, for example, just for being arrested. They can't be in education. It does have to come with a cost. Now look, people are trying to phrase this in terms of free speech. Palestine Action, under the Terrorist Act, if you damage property, that also qualifies as being a terrorist activity. It doesn't just mean bombing, for example.
Right.
And let's be clear, Palestine Action was training people in how to create sleeper cells around the country, had a map of potential targets to attack. They didn't just attack RAF Bryce Norton, they had other attacks on other bases and other places for years
and
as well.
And they've used violence as
well.
well.
And they've used violence against security guards and others, terrible violence used against them. So let's not get taken away by the images of old Anglican vicars and others and white.
No, I get that. I just fear that the government has making a rod for its own back, because what they're going to have to do every time this happens is arrest hundreds and hundreds of people, and you know it's not going to stop them. So they have to come up with something better.
It's a double standard as well, because they haven't been doing this about Hezbollah. They've allowed other things to happen completely under their noses and haven't acted. It's only when you get sort of the bleeding heart liberals here that they take action.
Well, I mean, you might say, for example, from the police's point of view, they're claiming this morning that it was a ridiculously difficult thing to actually police. But I'm imagining that they're probably more likely to arrest a bunch of 70 and 80-year-olds than they are a bunch of young, you know, pro-Palestine Muslim types who might want to have a bit of a punch-up.
There's a big march happening soon to commemorate some Hezbollah leader who's died, and there are supposed to be lots of people coming out to basically chant support for him and for Hezbollah. The big test will be to see whether they get the same action meted out to them. Otherwise, it's just more evidence of another type of two-tier policing.
Although I was talking to a friend of mine the other week who used to be in the police, and he said actually we used to love the public order marches because we just get stuck right into them, you know. And actually the individual police just have a great day because they can punch as many people as they like and generally speaking get away with it.
Well, you know, I remember in the 1980s, those poor miners who were at the wrong end of the batons and the tear gas and the horses. If we had that sort of policing today, there'd be no Just Oil. There would be no extinction. The poppies and Tarquins would be...
No, quite. Speaking of which, let's talk about the Jurgens of this world, because Jürgen Meyer, of course, on GB Energy, one of our favourite figures here, he's been to Scotland. You know, they are supposed to be based in Scotland, but he doesn't go there very often. And I think I'm safe to say that this is the first, perhaps an only time, I'll be quoting to you from the John O'Groats Journal, which it sounds like a great place to work. Apparently, Great British Energy were up in the Highlands at the weekend, and Jürgen Meyer was signing a deal with the Highlands and Islands Enterprise, an Aberdeen-based GB Energy, signed in Inverness on Thursday. According to a spokesman for the islands, the deal will involve working together to identify areas of shared priorities and maximise economic and community benefits across the region. This is when you know you have an organisation which is completely worthless. They issue these ridiculous statements that they've signed a contract to do literally nothing.
Well, I was amazed to find that Jürgen Meyer is following me on Twitter, despite the fact that I never comment on energy, and none of my content, I'm sure, is he sympathetic to.
Do you think he's doing it by mistake?
If you have a message you'd like me to pass on to him, I'd be very happy to.
Please, ask him to come on the show. We'd love to have him on the show, because so far we've only ever seen him speaking once, and this was it.
Great British Energy stems from one very simple idea, that British people should have a right to own and benefit from our own natural energy resources. This is why Great British Energy is 100% owned by the British people, for the British people. Our goal is to help communities and bill payers reap the benefits of clean, secure, homegrown energy. Our journey to energy security, clean power, and net zero is truly on path, and we at Great British Energy are here to accelerate that exciting journey.
So now they've done a deal in the Highlands with a group of people to see what shared, missions they can have. I mean, does he actually really think that we believe he's got a proper job? That would be my question to him, because he hasn't got a proper job. Apparently he's been in Scotland about 4 times since he was appointed, and most of the time he works from home. He hasn't really got much of an office.
Well, what can you say? I agree with you. I mean, it's just another one of these quangos, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Absolutely right. Coming up to 10 minutes to 7, we've got a few other stories to talk to you about, including the weather, which is going to get very good today, and all of this week, and a John Lewis duvet, which is in the mail today. Apparently, you can buy this thing. It's an Icelandic duvet, £12,460. You know, that'll keep you cool at night, I bet. Let's just talk.
It was broadcast on national television, and millions of people saw the clip of him saying death, death to the IDF.
Yes, justice delayed is justice denied. I really can't see why it would take the Crown Prosecution Service longer than about an hour to come to a decision as to whether Pascal Robinson, whatever his name is, should be charged or not. But of course, it is another fundamental cornerstone of our democracy that people are innocent until proven guilty.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 6:52. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock, of course, and the Morning Glory podcast available as soon as we finish, around about 10:15 this morning. Red Parliament is here, of course. James in Yorkshire says, if the illegal migrants have no passports because they tore them up and threw them in the English Channel, how can they be given UK visas? Given that visas are linked to passports, which are an indication of identity, we have to ask how that works. Now, these are people that have come in on social care visas legally. These people haven't come in illegally. It's just that we don't know where they are now. Because they've obviously the visa runs out, and if they don't go to renew it or they don't go and present themselves somewhere, nobody knows whether they're still here or not. That seems to be the problem. Jeremy in Exeter says there was a small protest outside a migrant hotel in Exeter on Saturday. We were outnumbered by a loud refugees are welcome crowd. That's the other thing that's being very well kind of put together, I suppose, is these refugee welcome type left-wingers, many of whom are sponsored by trade unions, who go and turn up at all of these migrant hotels wherever they are. Let's get a voice note from Adrian.
They keep talking about a detention centre. Well, where is it? Can we have some videos of it? I mean, they're coming in hundreds, sometimes thousands a day, and they're going to detain all of them. Well, it's easy to show us the pictures, not just one or two in a van, the whole place. We know where the prisons are. Where is the detention centre? And that will actually act as deterrent.
Well, we've been asking the same question, Adrian, and clearly, as far as Yvette Cooper is concerned, they don't want to give out any information. She says because it will aid somehow the people smugglers. I'm not quite sure why. Surely, if the people smugglers see that there is a detention centre, that might put people off coming.
Yeah, and there's no way in which telling the numbers would make a bit of difference to what they do. No, they don't want to give us the numbers. That's the honest truth. We await a regular update from Yvette Cooper this morning. We'll keep an eye on her Twitter. Meanwhile, let's talk about another sort of road to Damascus conversion that seems to have gone on in the Labour government. And this time, Bridget Phillipson said it's a national disgrace that so many white working class people, children, are unable to get the grades needed to get into university. She's changed her tune, hasn't she? Yeah, she's the most ideological member in the cabinet after Homer. I mean, she's a person who's riddled with woke ideology. Yes. So you know, who would have thought the policy she's espoused in the past about teaching people that they are the beneficiaries of white privilege, that systemic racism, we're all born into a state of original sin because of the evils of slavery and racism and the British Empire guilt. No surprise, therefore, that white working class children don't feel valued in society and that they are the worst producing, and yet they're always told, of course, that it's ethnic minorities who are the most underachieving, when we know it's not. We had the Tony Sewell report came out, showed just the opposite. There is a huge crisis here amongst the white working class. Labour have completely abandoned their demographic. It should stop being called the Party of Work. No more. It should be called the Welfare Party, not the Labour Party.
No, exactly right. I'll tell you where else you can't find any white working class kids, particularly male ones, is inside the BBC. You know, where they talk about how, we've got a very diverse workforce. Well, you haven't actually, because you might have a diverse workforce when it comes to the colour of people's skin. But actually, they're all middle class, and they've all been to very good schools, and they've got university degrees. What they don't have is anybody representing the white working class in there.
Huge contrast to the 1960s, for example. You know, when you did have, thanks to the grammar schools, of course, you had working class and lower middle class children able to get into those institutions and really shake up how they were. Now they've got their feet firmly under the desk.
Well, this is what I think has gone wrong.
They've pulled up the drawbridge.
This is what I think has gone wrong with mainstream journalism in this country, because everybody now is a sort of middle class, posh boy or girl, and there's nobody really getting into it from a trade perspective, which is what they used to do. They used to leave school at 15, go and do a journalism course, going to cover local courts and work through the indentures and all of that, and so they would be tradesmen and women, and they were very good at it. But now you can't get into journalism that way. You have to get a degree first.
Journalism and the police, right? As soon as you send people to university, they go in well-meaning people, and they come out of these, I call them work madrassas, as completely indoctrinated in this ideology. Yes, journalism was at its best when people learned it on the job. Teachers were at their best when they had independent teacher training colleges that weren't part of university departments of education. The police were at their best when they weren't actually being dictated to by the College of Policing and taught about critical race theory and all of this nonsense. Go back to basics. Let people leave, when they leave school at whatever it is, 16, 17, 18, let them just go straight into those trades and industries.
Yeah, absolutely right. A couple of different stories for you. This one in The Sun. EasyJet pilot strips off in hotel after booze binge. This is quite funny. Page 13. This is your captain streaking. That's what they say. Plane passengers were stunned when they realised a sozzled guest who stripped off at a five-star hotel bar was actually their pilot. Which is not always a good look if you're going to fly a plane the next day. The boozed-up captain was seen stumbling around naked in the resort at 2:30 a.m. after a marathon drinking session.
Well,
it's good to know some habits die hard.
Just imagine you're partying with some chap, the next morning you see him coming onto your plane.
I know. I think there was a case of that, wasn't there? I remember there was a pilot breathalyzed, I think, once, and literally escorted off the plane because he was considered to be too hungover to actually fly. So that's the sort of funny story for the day. The Mail have got a ridiculous one, which is £12,460 for a John Lewis duvet. On page 3. It's called an Icelandic eiderdown cover from its ultimate collection. It promises pure luxury, Single-size version of the duvet is $4,935. The Super King mattress worth $12,499. Egyptian cotton duvet cover. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Who spends that kind of money?
It's absolutely
going to bed?
It's absolutely obscene. I mean, for that price, I want it to be filled with swan feathers from the King's collection, the Golden Fleece from Jason and the Argonauts. You know, that should be in this duvet. I mean, I don't think even a millionaire could, in good conscience, part with that much money for
you could not justify that, could you? And finally, people who don't have that kind of money, young professionals are enduring early bedtimes, bans on partners staying overnight and compulsory pet sitting as they try to beat soaring rents by lodging with landlords. Apparently lodges, adverts for lodges have risen by 50% over the past 3 years.
Well, this just reminds me of going back, you know, Fraser Nelson says it's never been a better time to be in Britain.
Yeah.
Is he
feeling all right?
This is going back to the era of rising damp with Rigsby, right? When you're in your room.
Miss Jones.
Do you have a girl in there? Well, you know, 10 p.m, the lock goes on the front door. No.
It's true. Absolutely remarkable stuff. Listen, Rafe, thank you very much indeed. Good to see you. It's coming up to 7 o'clock. We've been here already for 1 hour. We've got 3 more hours to go. We've got loads to talk about, including the latest from the migrant madness that's inflicting and afflicting this country. Which Fraser Nelson says has never been better. Yeah, we'll talk about that. Loads more to do. You know what to do as well. Join in, send us your views, voice notes, letters if you want, emails. We'll see you after the news. We've been talking this morning about a new theme park which is going to be built. The Universal Studios apparently are going to build it in Bedfordshire. We've been asking many of you to give us some ideas for theme parks. Alison in South Wales says in the new theme park at 5 p.m. every day they could have the PIP parade. All the people driving their brand new Motability cars.
Instead of the water rapids, you can have a road you go down that's full of potholes in a car with bad suspension and flat tyres. I don't know why they're bothering building a theme park in this country. They're going right, no one will be able to afford to go to it anyway.
How about the Rachel Reeves ride, says Terry in Birmingham. You go round and round and vanish up your own deficit. It's the HS2 ride. It travels at high speed for 10 feet, where everyone gets off and into the replacement bus ride. Tickets are £50 if bought 5 months in advance, or £1,000 on the day.
There's a strong rumour going round that Rachel Reeves is going to have a kissing booth for this theme park. So what I do, mate, I shove a £5 in a pot and you can go and fill your boots.
Thank you very much indeed, and very generous of you. One from G, who says fast-track entry to every ride for illegals, plus a free night stay in the Parks Hotel and free food. New theme park bumper cars will have to pay a congestion charge, and the funhouse isn't built yet, despite Angela Rayner's pledge to build houses. What about Ghost Train doesn't move because the driver's on strike? Have a good day. This is brilliant for the theme park. How about grow your own cannabis farm? Yeah, that's a good one. An Ethiopian safari park narrated by Angela Rayner, says Gary in Durham. How about that? This sums up the Labour Party to me. The one idea they have to improve growth for the economy is to basically have a bloody big fun fair. It's the type of idea primary school children would pitch, given 10 minutes to come up with something. Well, it turns out, Matt, in Royston, that it's not even their idea. But they're now trying to claim it's their idea, even though it was actually the Tories.
They have done brilliantly on breakfast, but you know on Drive you've done brilliantly as well. Downhill slide rides surrounded by ULEZ cameras so that people are fined on exit. Love it. You could have a Birmingham-themed Whack the Rat stall. If you whack the rat, you can have your bin emptied for free. On the Labour theme park, a House of Mirrors, where they're all boarded up because they can't bear to look themselves in the eye.
I've got a great one for you, mate.
This is for the. Is this for the Universal theme park run by Labour?
Moat right around the park.
Yeah.
With loads of dinghies. Call it a channel and say anyone who can break in, all is free.
Imagine a Scouser say you can break into a theme park for free.
Hi, Jeremy. Hey, it's simple. You've got the Labour Ghost Train.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's coming up to 3 minutes past 7. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through, of course, until 10 o'clock. We've got lots of different stories to talk about this morning. Front page of The Times has got quelling the Palestine protest was an unrealistic task, according to the Metropolitan Police. They arrested 532 people. 15 of them were over 80, 112 of them were over 70. Most of them are certainly over 50 and 60. And they've all been categorised now as terrorists, which rather makes a skewed statistical collection of data for the Home Office, because basically only last year all terrorist activity resulted in 248 arrests. Now it's more than doubled because of a load of old gits who don't seem to know what the law is. I'm saying I don't think it's a very good idea to keep arresting all these people because clearly they're not terrorists. And if you start calling them terrorists, what does that do to the terrorism figures? And let's have a voice note from Jay, who's got a way to deal with it.
Mike, fantastic show as always. With the whole Palestine Action thing, why doesn't every city in the UK have 2 water cannon trucks built and made in the UK? Just absolutely hammer them with water. They're very effective, and people don't like coming back. They don't like being hit by it.
No, they really don't. I mean, maybe some of them won't come back because they don't like being arrested, but it starts to get a bit tricky when you're arresting 80-year-olds and 70-year-olds and firing water cannon at them. I mean, they may be silly old fools, but, you know, I don't know what the answer is. You might have a better answer. Perhaps round them all up and put them in a detention camp. Oh, no. Those are already full, aren't they, because of all the migrants. Front page of The Sun, dinghy migrants get dinghy days out. Hard to believe this one. Discounts on the taxpayer. Migrants arriving on small boats are being offered cut-price dinghy days out. Funded by taxpayers. They can have a discount card which gets them all kinds of discounts on things from food down to cinema tickets, down to football tickets, down to massages, down to gym classes. Absolutely unbelievable stuff. Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp said this has to stop. The British people have had enough. You can say that again. 26,000 prisoners, meanwhile, have been freed early by Labour. So there are 26,000 more lags out on the streets. And we're spending about £5 million for some new clothes for some of the ones who are going into prison in the next coming few weeks. Also, apparently we're going to deport people now who are in our prisons from foreign countries. We've been suggesting that for years. Finally, the government's actually listening to common sense and doing something that we told them to do. However, there is a bit of a wrinkle to it, because it might mean that some people who have committed crimes and who are then on trial and found guilty are going to be sent home back to their own countries before spending any time in prison at all, which probably means they won't spend any time in prison at all, either at home or here. White working class pupils are being written off, says Phillipson. Also, we've lost 150,000 people who came here from overseas to work in the social care section of the country. Apparently nobody knows what's happened to them. Nobody knows where they are. Brilliant. Absolutely fantastic. 0344 499 1000. If you've got a few spare quid, though, you can spend £12,460 on a duvet from John Lewis. Great, isn't it? 6 minutes past 7. See you in a minute. Now, the front page of the Daily Telegraph goes with a story which, again, we were questioning at the time. Starmer hid £30 billion cost of the Chagos surrender. You might remember that Keir Starmer, when he said they were selling off the Chagos Islands, said that the suggestions that it was going to cost tens of billions of pounds were wildly inaccurate. Let's just remind ourselves of what he said.
This cost is part and parcel of using Britain's global reach to keep us safe at home. And it will be less than the cost of running one aircraft carrier for a year. Today's agreement is the only way to maintain the base in the long term.
Yeah, well, he's being accused of lying now, which, of course, we've accused him of doing many times. They don't like it in Downing Street when we say that. Unfortunately, it happens to be true, because it now turns out the government's own estimate of the cost of giving away the British Indian Ocean Territory to Mauritius is almost £35 billion, according to documents released under the Freedom of Information Act, far higher than the £3.4 billion figure that Sir Keir previously used in public. Basically, Labour ministers are now facing claims that they misled Parliament and the public with an accountancy trick to hide the bill from the taxpayers. So I'm terribly sorry, Sir Keir Starmer, but once again, I'm afraid there is no other conclusion to draw that you were lied to the British public. And as Rafe Heidelman-Q said, surely this could be a resigning situation, shouldn't it? I mean, you can't just go around lying barefaced to the British public. Let's talk to Will Kingston, political commentator and host of the Fire at Will podcast. Will, very good morning to you.
G'day, Mike. Great to see you.
I mean, we've now got Other politicians, and we had Kemi Badenoch in here the other day calling Keir Starmer a liar. I've had Richard Tice from Reform calling him a liar. Pretty much everybody in the public domain now realises that Keir Starmer tells lies, and he's been caught out telling yet another one, this time about flogging off the Chagos Islands.
Yeah, well, I can't see how you could come to any other conclusion, Mike. And here's the thing, which is at the heart of what is now a pattern of behaviour, and that is that obviously this Labor government, A, thinks that the public are idiots and can't trust them with particular types of information, like the Afghan scandal, for example, and B, they obviously know that what they're doing is going to be unpopular, which, forgive me for being a bit naive, but I don't think that's particularly good politics. Like, why wouldn't they just go, look, we know that this is going to be unpopular, as opposed to lying to people about it? Why don't we actually change course beforehand, which means that therefore we may, who knows, actually come up with better policy? Who would have thought that giving away islands and then paying money to give away islands wouldn't be popular with the public? That should be a message that you should change course. It should be a message to lie about it and then just hopefully try and make sure that it stays covered up.
Well, exactly right. And the trouble is that we now have to use these Freedom of Information Act applications to get the truth out of any, whether it be a politician or government department, because they're just literally spending most of their time desperately trying to keep us from knowing what it is that they're up to. I mean, to wit, take you all the way back to the Conservative government, taking out a super injunction, so we never found out they were smuggling in tens of thousands of Afghans from post the Taliban situation that they didn't want us to find out about.
Yeah, that's exactly right, which is why I say this is a pattern of behaviour with this government. And I think it is also part of this leftist instinct, and I'll include the previous Conservative government in leftist instinct, that they know best, that they're smarter than the average person, and as a result of that, A, they will be able to keep these things covered up, and B, this is the right thing to do, even if the plebs don't seem to agree with us. It is fundamentally anti-democratic. It goes to this sort of technocratic instinct which has taken hold of government. And is it any wonder, Mike, that we have now the Corbyn Party, Reform, which are challenging the major parties, because this has been the way that politics has run for far too long?
Yeah, exactly right. And people are not stupid either, because social media has meant that we can see what's going on before our very eyes. Somebody put out, you might remember, back end of, I think, the week before last, a picture or a video of a load of migrants being shipped into the Britannia Hotel in Canary Wharf under cover of darkness at 1 o'clock in the morning, all getting out of a coach and going into the hotel. That gets published on social media, gets seen by millions of people. If the government says, oh no, there's no migrants there, you go, well, sorry, we don't believe you. There's the video.
Yeah, the migrant boats as well, and the ratio of men to women is another good example. That story the other day, we can see that 80 to 90% of these people on the boats are men, and yet you still have Labor politicians who will happily say that there are women and children on board. It's like they still think they're running politics in the 1990s. It's like they still think that, there is this kind of, that Blair is still Prime Minister, that kind of technocracy still works, and that there aren't cameras on everyone's phones. It really, really is odd. And this is an age where times have moved on and people are craving authenticity in their politicians. It's why people like Farage, and yes, even people like Corbyn, are far more popular, because for better or worse, they see them as being authentic.
Well, that's right. But also, they see what's going on around them. One of the reasons that we're going to be speaking to Jamie McIver, a councillor from Essex, coming up next on the show, because he was out at a protest in Epping yesterday. People are seeing the protests going on. People are seeing that they're peaceful. People are seeing that, there are all sorts of communities up and down the country, from whether it be Essex down to Bournemouth, whether it be up to Newcastle in the northeast, whether it be up to Glasgow. Every single part of Britain has got one of these protests going on now, because that's where all the migrants are. Everybody can see them. Everybody knows where they are. The government is trying to conceal it. The government's trying to convince us that they've actually detained some people as well, but nobody really believes them.
Yeah, that's right. They no longer can control the narrative. But I go back to the theme of this conversation so far, and that is, if you can't control a narrative, or you can't keep spinning like you used to be able to spin in, for example, the Blair era, that is a sign to change course. It's not a sign to just keep trying to lie to the public or try to conceal information, because it doesn't work.
It really doesn't. because, again, you can see from the stories going around this morning, 435 arrivals on Saturday alone, right? We're going to have a spell of really, really lovely weather this week, which is going to presumably mean that we're going to have thousands more people coming between now and next weekend, which is going to very comfortably take the numbers of migrants coming to the UK since Keir Starmer got in charge of being Prime Minister to more than 50,000.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Well, this is a story that we speak about every Monday morning, and I have to rack my brain to work out what I'm going to say that's new and interesting about this story, because if the government refuses to fix it, the story stays the same week after week. Now, the thing here is...
So I was just going to interrupt you. I'm just watching Sky News, which is showing what can only be described as a hell on Earth scenario. It looks like literally Armageddon. They've got like yellow and red swirls going around Europe as if the whole place is on fire. Sorry, it's just a weather report, you know what I mean? Sorry, you carry on.
It's one of my it is one of my favourite. I love the climate change alarmism and the cheap tricks that the media plays to try and make people scared. But I also do like, as a guest in the United Kingdom, one of the great media tropes, which is the 30-degree heat wave, and how every single media organisation, apart from the sensible ones like talkTV, of course, talks about how there is catastrophe looming. Right. Whenever there's a bit of nice sun. I personally think that global warming will be one of the great things for the United Kingdom. I don't know why we're complaining.
I know. Well, you come from a hot country. I mean, I'm sure that whenever it gets a bit warm there, you don't get. Well, maybe you do. I don't know. But surely they don't do all that red nonsense and the buildings on fire. Wildfires everywhere. It's just mad.
Yeah. No.
Anyway, sorry,
we said that don't get worried about 30-degree heat.
Exactly. You were talking about the whole migrant situation, but every day, right? Just when you think that there isn't anything else you can talk about, there is something you can talk about, because we've got the Sun page one today, in which they're saying that all these asylum seekers are getting perks like you wouldn't believe, including dinghy days out. You'd think they've had enough of dinghies, by the time they've got here, but they're getting free cinema tickets, they're getting discounted massages, they're getting Lime bikes to drive around on. As somebody said, Rafe Heidelman-Koo was here earlier, they're actually providing them with the bike on which to come up behind you and steal your phone. It's great, brilliant, fantastic.
Yeah, that's right. The dinghy one, I shouldn't be laughing, but you can't help but laugh, because it's almost beyond parody at this point how stupid it is. It goes back to the fundamental point, Mike, that we have made in the past, and that is that if you keep creating incentives for people to come, they are going to keep coming. And these are yet more incentives. When you think about the really simple steps that you need to stop the boats, step one is stopping the incentives to coming, and step B is saying that if you do try to turn up by a boat, you will never ever stay in this country. Now, they're both relatively simple things to do.
You would think.
I just can't understand why the government doesn't do it, and which is why, again, I think with all of the policies that they are announcing on the boats issue, they're all tinkering around the edges. And as a result of that, they're never going to make change, because they're unwilling to do the fundamental things that you need to do to stop the boats.
But the problem, again, is that basically nothing really works. The system is broken, and I'm not just talking about the asylum system. I'm talking about almost every system of government, almost every lever that they want to pull or they want to do to change the way things are. They pull it and then nothing happens, because the whole system has kind of fallen over, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I was reflecting on this before coming on. It goes to one of the other stories in the paper this morning, which is about the 150-odd thousand people on care visas, where we no longer know where they are in the country or what their status is. And that is when, reform eventually gets into government, if the polls continue to stay as they are, the first step will be a complete and total review of all the different government departments, and a clean out of the dud talent and the ideologically biased people that are just preventing change from happening. So before you even think about boats policy, before you think about economic growth, before you think about the NHS, there are people in each of these respective departments who are either too useless to do basic things like looking at where people are on visas, or too ideologically biased to stop people from coming on dinghies. That's going to have to be the first step in any new government, or else all the great ideas that they have will all come to naught.
Yeah, I think that's right. And there really is no place for them to go. On the front page of the Express, I mean, we've got a reform councillor coming in shortly. But entire streets, according to some Reform Council chiefs, are being lined up to accommodate asylum seekers in the UK. 12 different individuals have told this to the Home Office, basically, saying that they're sort of hoovering up communities in Dover, Thanet, Canterbury and Folkestone in Kent, reportedly hit the hardest, you know, because at the end of the day, there's a £500 million sort of loot, you know, fund, if you like, for a more sustainable accommodation model as they try and get people out of hotels and into these single occupancy or multiple occupancy homes.
Yeah, this is yes minister level, like, satirical nonsense. It's like the people who have crafted this policy and they've heard, oh, people are really upset about these migrant hotels, so let's move them out of migrant hotels and put them in houses, as if it is the structure or the nature of the architecture that's the problem. That's not the issue. The issue is that we're paying money to house people who should not be in the country. I don't care if they're in a hotel or a house. It's the same basic issue. In fact, it's arguably worse if they're put in a house, because they're going to be even more embedded in the community. Exactly. They're going to be less, it's going to be harder to pick up where exactly they are. So this isn't again, it's just a classic kind of government response to be seen to be doing something, even though they are not willing to actually grasp the fundamental problem.
Exactly right. Will, good to see you. Thanks very much indeed. Will Kingston, political commentator and host of the Fire at Will podcast. Margaret in Yorkshire says, Mike, how can we find out who gave permission for all these freebies to be given to the migrants at the cost of the British taxpayer? Well, it should be available information, but of course we'll have to dig for it and we'll have to ask for it. You might have to get a freedom of information request in order to get them to admit to what is going on and who's in charge of it. Let's get a voice note from Lee.
Morning, Mike. Lee from Chelmsford. Big week coming up for two-tier. We're going to hit the 50,000 mark of illegals that we know about. I wonder if that will be the regular update we're waiting from Vet Cooper. Anyway, all the best.
Yeah, I'm watching and waiting for the Yvette Cooper regular update. We haven't had one for 3 days. That doesn't sound regular to me. Or maybe she just doesn't work weekends, you know. Maybe she comes into work sort of, you know, midday on a Monday, goes home maybe, I don't know, midday on a Thursday, you know, that usual kind of political week. Who can say what it is that Yvette Cooper spends her entire time doing? We'll bring you more coming up at 7:20 next. We're going to be talking to Jamie McIver about what went on yesterday in Epping.
You can get your travel to and from the doctors paid for. You can get contact lenses, you can get glasses. I mean, I have Vision Express take 45 quid out of my account every month for my contact lenses. Where are my free contact lenses?
Yeah, I know.
And it's not really essential, is it? They can survive with a pair of glasses, right? Yeah. They can get wigs, they can get all sorts.
Wigs?
So, yeah,
can I complain about that? I feel seen. It's wigs.
Would you like
terrible
free
thing
wigs?
to say.
Where's my wigs?
Yeah, I'm sat right here. He has to pay 48 quid a month.
Also, do you know how...
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 7:22. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through, of course, until 10 o'clock. Coming up, we're going to be talking about some of the migrant hotel protests that took place over the weekend. We'll speak to Councillor Ryan Taylor, who was up at one in Leeds, Councillor Jamie McIver as well. He was out at one in Epping, of course, still going on. It's been now a couple of weeks since these protests began, largely brought on and signalled by charges being brought against various different, shall we say, residents of these hotels in those areas where they've been staying. I wonder if all these, this is on the Palestine Action protest. Steve says this: I wonder if all these older middle-class white pro-Palestine Action protesters will still be turning out to sit on London pavements when it's freezing cold and peeing it down. Well, probably not, you know. It's always nice in the summer, isn't it? You get the Summer Holiday Brigade all turning up. Kevin in Stafford says there's a snag in using water cannon on terrorist protesters. Imagine all the broken hips, knees and shoulders as the old duffers get knocked off their feet. Cue NHS crisis. Well, we already heard, didn't we? There's going to be apparently an NHS crisis this week because of the heat wave. I don't know why that causes an NHS crisis, but that's what we're being warned about. Of course, it can be so hot that you might end up in hospital where they don't have any air conditioning to a large extent, so you might want to be careful about that. Let's talk to Councillor Ryan Taylor, Reform UK, up in Morley South, which is in Leeds. Ryan, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike.
Good to talk to you. Tell us about your weekend. What happened? Where's the protest up there?
Well, yeah, some of the local protests are just taking place around a few of the big hotels that are housing a lot of these migrants or asylum seekers who've come in.
And how big of a problem is that in Leeds?
It's a growing problem.
Yeah.
We are seeing it a lot more. A lot more hotels are getting full up. Not just around Leeds, but all over West Yorkshire, parts of Wakefield. And there was one over in Wakefield recently. I don't know if you saw it. They were running an actual burger kitchen from the asylum hotel.
Oh yes, I remember that. Yeah, it's incredible, isn't it? How this stuff just kind of happens and nobody gets to find out about it until some intrepid individual goes in with a camera and has a look around.
And this is one of the problems that we're seeing throughout. There's no transparency. No one's been open and honest about who's coming in, what type of person's coming in, what hotels are staying in, where they're going to go afterwards. And the people who are turning out to these protests, they're not your natural protesters. They're just people who have given up. They've got nowhere else to turn.
Yeah. That is the problem. And what about the counter-protests? Because I hear from an awful lot of people around the country that, wherever they go, they'll suddenly find a bunch of people turning up with, refugees welcome signs everywhere.
Well, the way I look at it as well, we're a British society. We don't do protests per se.
Right.
Protesting, to me, is politics failing. But people have got nowhere to turn now. So people are turning out to try. They can't go to the government because they'll get arrested.
Right.
They can't go into public places because the police will kettle them. So they go into these hotels. They're not well organised. However, the counter-protesters are well funded. The black shirts, they're all uniformed up. They've got masks on. The police do anything to appease them.
Yeah.
So the people who are actually going out to protest have got genuine concerns, and they're just.
And they're also
smeared.
Genuinely local people, aren't they?
Yeah, they're not organised. They're just genuine local people who are trying to turn out to try and make somebody listen, because the government are not listening. They've not listened for a long time to people, and that goes all through every thread of society. They're not listening, and people are just fed up with it.
Right. And as far as the policing of this protest was going on, how was that?
As far as I understand, I've not actually attended the protest, but I've spoken to a lot of people who have. The policing was kind of straightforward. They allowed the counter-protesters to be masked. However, the protesters against the asylum hotels were not allowed to be masked. The counter-protesters were, like I say, well organised. They have loud hailers. They're all bounded together. They're all uniformed. They're all wearing black. They're getting well funded from someone. So,
and is your sense that, well, we know that some of them, if they stand up to racism, are actually funded by trade unions, and they've got a sort of centrally based kind of placard maker, if you like. Quite a lot of them have got socialist worker placards, and as far as you were aware, could you see whether they, or would you know whether they were coming from outside the area?
I wouldn't 100% be able to say if they were coming from outside the area, but they are. these people, they're almost professional protesters. They will be turning up at some migrant rally. They'll turn up at, they'll be all the same people who were at the Black Lives Matter riots, all the same people who will turn out to some any crazy reason for them to turn up and protest against or have a fight or just shout and drown people out.
Right.
They'll turn up in the black uniforms, well organised, well funded, and where is the transparency with this? Where's the journalism looking into this, saying, look, who's funding this? Hold your hand up, and be honest about it.
Yeah. No, it's a very good point. Ryan, thanks very much indeed. Councillor Ryan Taylor there from Reform's Council up in Morley South, up near Leeds there, where, again, nobody really knows where these counter-protesters are coming from. There's a pretty good belief that they're well organised. There's certainly what you're looking at there on the TV is some footage from a few days back where they were being escorted by police in Aldershot to go to a migrant protest there. They're all wearing masks. They don't look as if they're locals. They certainly don't seem to be locals. They seem to be being bussed in from somewhere else. They seem to be given placards to wave. They seem to be given, certainly the wherewithal to get from point A to point B, and the police seem to always help them to get there, which is a bit weird. Let's have a conversation with Anne. She wants to talk about these protests in Gwynedd. Anne, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Thank you very much for calling.
I'm just watching what's on television now.
Yeah.
And the people who are protesting and saying refugees and asylum seekers welcome, simple remedy. The police go in, take the names and addresses and say, right, we will send you 1 or 2 immigrants to look after.
Yeah.
Take the names and addresses, and if they say we can't, oh no, you say they're welcome, you pay for them, and then the taxpayer doesn't pay for them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfectly simple.
Yes, perfectly simple.
Totally simple.
And a very, very good remedy as well. Anne, thank you very much indeed. It's all very straightforward, isn't it? But unfortunately, instead of appeasing the people who are concerned, the police seem more keen to appease the people who are not concerned, who are not from the local area, who are not from the neighbourhood, who are actually being shipped in from somewhere else to cause trouble and to cause pain and anguish and to shout names at those people who are local, who are fed up to the back teeth of having migrants in their communities that they didn't ask for and that they didn't want and that they were never consulted about. Joanna in Salisbury says, Mike, maybe they need to start ferrying these migrants around to Gibraltar, UK territory, so they can cross the border and go back into the EU. Keep doing it until they get bored with crossing the channel to end up back in the same place. There's so many things that could be done. Steve says this, great show as usual. I have relatives in Wales spitting feathers because the Welsh Labour government, who are useless, have given £4 million to the Ugandan tree planting scheme to promote equal sex tree planting. The Welsh Health Service needs more funding, but no, it's Ugandan equal sex tree planting that is the priority. You couldn't make this up. Candidate for Plank of the Week? Very possibly, Stephen. I'll have to look into that. If you haven't seen Plank of the Week yet, by the way, it is out there. You can catch up with it any time you like. It's on YouTube, of course. Much, much more to do. We're going to speak to Jamie McIver pretty soon. Also, Heidi Hommel is here from the US of A. We're going to find out what the latest is on Trump's meeting coming up end of this week in Alaska. Let's get a voice note from Pete.
Mike, there is only one benefit to putting all these migrants into separate accommodation, because when it comes to getting rid of them and deporting them, it's going to be a lot easier than trying to tackle a hotel with 300 or 400 of them at a time, because you know what will happen there. There'll be some sort of standoff and the violence will break out. But if they're only maybe half a dozen at a time in a house, well, I don't agree with it, by the way. I don't agree. They shouldn't be given anything. It should be put in tents. But, it might be easier that way.
Will be easier that way, but the trouble is there's so many people coming. Like we said, another 435 migrants arrived on Saturday alone. Pretty soon we're going to be right up to 50,000 on the migrant tracker since Keir Starmer became Prime Minister back in July of last year, and there's nowhere to put them. It's as simple as that. Look at that, 49,516. By the probably end of today that'll have reached 50,000, and we know they're still coming by other means as well. It's absolutely shambolic, ridiculous, crazy. Who's going to stop it? This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through, of course, until 10 o'clock. It's 7:33. We've got plenty to talk about this morning. One from Jackie says, we have hosepipe bans, the water situation is dire, and yet the idiot government allows tens of thousands of people to come here, all needing water. Maybe a selfish view, but surely wait until we can at least supply enough water for the present population. Keep going. Yeah, well, I mean, that's just one part of it, isn't it? You would think as we get older, this country would be getting easier. Instead, it's turning to mayhem, says Steve in Cambridge. Well, we're going to talk very soon, even, to Jamie McIver, who's here from Reform Councillor over in Ongar in Essex. Jamie, good to see you. We'll come to you in a second. We're just going to speak quickly to Heidi Hommel, who's KTAR news reporter over in Phoenix, Arizona, because we've got a big meeting coming up at the end of the week in Alaska, of all places. Heidi, very good morning to you.
Good morning. How's it going?
Yeah, very well. Good to see you. I don't know if you've ever been to Alaska. I haven't, but it's going to be a big week for Alaska, isn't it? Because Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin meeting up on Friday. What are you hearing?
Yep, there's going to be a summit on Friday in Alaska, and we could have a ceasefire between Ukraine and Russia this week. No word yet if Zelensky's going to be there. The White House is considering it, but has not extended a formal invitation yet.
Okay. And what are the Americans saying about all this? Are they happy that Donald Trump's getting involved in all of this, or would they rather he left it all alone?
The Americans want a ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine. They want the war to end over there because we want America's involvement in the war to be done as well. We want resources focused here. And that's what President Trump really ran on, that he was going to get a ceasefire done in his first 100 days. We're after that now. So he's even grown frustrated with Putin, starting kind of last week, even threatened to increase sanctions against Russia because there's no ceasefire yet.
No, good. And I mean, as far as how there'll be a kind of media circus, presumably, all heading up to Alaska for a few days of Friday, maybe going into Saturday. Difficult to know exactly, but it's going to be quite a weekend, isn't it?
Yeah, and the location for the meeting itself, Mike, is symbolic. Alaska. The U.S. bought the territory from Russia in 1867. So it even kind of gives Russia a leg up in these ceasefire negotiations, just the location itself.
Right. I guess Trump's not going to promise to sell it back to him or anything, is he?
Well, you know what? Some Russian nationalists believe that Alaska should go back to Russia, but I don't see Trump doing that at all.
No. Well, we'll keep an eye on it. Good to speak to you, Heidi. Thanks very much indeed. Heidi Hommel, KTAR news reporter there in Phoenix, Arizona. Quite a long way from Alaska, but not as far away as we are. Jamie McIver's here. Jamie, good to see you.
Good morning.
Morning. I know you were out and about the weekend in Epping, where the demonstration continues. Was this the third weekend, is it?
Yeah, I think there's a total of 8 peaceful protests now. Yesterday was actually so peaceful it was almost silent, Mike. And I think that's testament to the quality of the people that live in Epping, actually.
Yes.
You know, they're not rising to this sort of mainstream media narrative that we're all far-right thugs, that we're violent. And I have to say, it's not even the mainstream that's trying to say this. Even some local politicians seem to think that we're all, you know, far-right Nazis. No, we're not. We're local families that want to see a hotel right next to a secondary school where young girls in their beautiful school uniforms are walking past. You know, we want that hotel closed. It's not safe. And, you know, I'm sick and tired, actually, Mike, of having my community dragged through the mud. When actually, you know, someone that went to the school in question, I can tell you now, this is a beautiful community. People of Epping are wonderful people. And, you know, when I was speaking to people yesterday, you know, it's the first time they've ever felt compelled to go and protest. They've otherwise had quite peaceful, happy lives. And to live in Epping, I'm not being funny, you have to have done something right in your life. It's a beautiful place to live.
A friend of mine who lives out that way went and joined the protest a week ago, and she's not a woman that you would have thought would ever do something like that.
Absolutely.
You know, but she's ordinary, you know, mother, and she's got a family there, and she and her husband went and walked with the local people. I mean, she lives a little bit further away than Epping, but you know, I mean, that's the kind of vibe, isn't it?
One thing it's actually done, it's really brought the community together. Actually, you know, a lot of people like to talk about division. It's actually the opposite. The community is completely together. And actually, one thing that I think is very clear for me is that they're not going to go away. These protests will continue every single week until the government close that
until
hotel.
something happens.
Yes.
Yeah. And what's their reasoning for not closing it? Because I mean, I guess at the moment the good news is that the school's actually closed.
Yes.
It's not actually open. But I know a week or more ago there was protection around the migrants so that they weren't coming out of the hotel so much. Is that still the case?
Well, I honestly don't know. What I do know is, obviously, being school holidays, I think there seems to be less of, from all sides actually, there seems to be no urgency to act, which is very frustrating. That frustrates the people of Epping, of course. I think we've seen, the council unanimously voted to close the hotel, but that doesn't really mean anything, to be honest with you. I think it...
Because it's not their call, is it?
No, actually, I think there's a lot of people accusing me of misinformation when I call things out, like the police escorting left-wing protesters towards families. But actually, there's big misinformation there. That motion does nothing. OK, it shows that the council doesn't want it, but that position's been clear anyway. And I think it's important that the council communicate that, because there was a lot of people coming up to me saying, oh, isn't it great that they voted to close the hotel? When's it going to close? That's not how it works. And actually, what's very frustrating for me as a local politician, I'm like the only local councillor that is going to these protests. I don't actually represent Epping. I represent the town next door. Many of my residents send their children to that school, and I've got affection for the town, so you couldn't keep me away. But there are 8 politicians that represent that town, and a town council, and a member of parliament. They're all invisible. See, if your community is hurting as much as Epping, how can you not want to be there with your people?
Exactly.
So I do hope that September gives the government a sensible deadline. OK, no one's at the school at the moment, but there of course are women that are too scared to walk their dogs, too scared to go for a run. So, I don't think the school should be the only reason. The hotel's inappropriate, period. However, children going back to school in September should give the government a practical deadline. But the issue we've got, Mike, what next? They're going to be putting HMOs in the community?
Well, that's the story I was going to bring up, because a piece in the Express says, particularly in Kent, not so much in Essex, but the reform leader of the Kent Council, Lyndon Kemcairn, is in the paper writing about how worried they are about Dover, Thanet, Canterbury, Folkestone, where local authorities are being warned that basically 500 million quid's going to be spent to buy up a load of properties and give them exclusively to migrants, sometimes an entire street. Which is bonkers, isn't it?
It's just awful, but it's, this is why people are so angry. I mean, in Epping, people aren't just angry about the hotel. It's obviously the whole reason why we're protesting. But I was talking to somebody yesterday, live in a beautiful village called Stapleford-Tawney, just nearby Epping. Massive solar farm, a Chinese manufactured eco-desert being dumped on their doorstep. Everywhere you go, people are unhappy. And the HMOs is a fantastic example of that. Nobody voted for uncontrolled illegal migration. Nobody voted to turn streets of this country into places that can't be recognised as this country, which is, I'm afraid, what happens. You only need to drive through parts of East London, as I do on my way back to Essex, and you can't believe you're in Britain. And people are concerned that this unfortunate situation is now spreading into rural communities like Epping, and people have moved away from London to get away from it. People don't like it, and they have a right to not like it. They have a right to not like that. So I think it's very worrying, because the thing with HMOs, they're anonymous. At least with a hotel, we know this is a hotel, you can't book a room to stay there, the Home Office are controlling it, you know that who's in there. The problem is we don't exactly know who's in there.
And if you want to avoid it, you can avoid it.
You can avoid it. You shouldn't have to. But the problem we have got, same with the hotels, we don't actually know who is in there. We don't know who these men are. They're totally unvetted. They're coming to the country illegally. We know the Bell only has men in it. And what are you going to do? Start putting these into streets like where my nan and granddad live? That is far more of a safeguarding risk. The problem is we need to control our borders. Why have we got loads of these boats just sitting in a harbour waiting to be recycled again? We've got the country is looking so weak, so vulnerable. And if we know, which we do, that these men are unsafe, and we also know some can be a risk to national security, why would you want to put them in a residential street?
And also, how does it work in terms of the way that at the moment, if they're in a hotel, they get all their food supplied to them, they get, gym lessons if they wish to have them. I mean, all sorts of stories this morning about discounted this, that and the other. But if you put them in a house, how do they then live unless you give them a load of money? So presumably we would be forced into then paying them grants or giving them credit cards or something so they can buy food.
Of course we will, and then when they want a new bathroom, a new kitchen, you can just see how it's going to end, Mike. I think the problem is we now have a situation where the country has woken up, and I say it's a problem, I think it's a good thing, because for too long, if you take the last Tory government, these members of Parliament were swanning around their constituencies, no one was really aware of what's going on. Now people have completely woken up, they are absolutely disgusted by the Conservative Party, and of course the Labour government are doing nothing. They ideologically, frankly, frankly don't want to do it. That's the problem.
No.
You've got 400 MPs.
Well, they're
in
busy
Parliament.
trying to tell us last week that they've arrested a load of people and they detained them all, but they won't tell us where they've detained them. They won't tell them how long they're detaining them for and when they're sending them back.
They've got a huge majority in the House of Commons. They can do whatever they want. They are choosing not to make this a priority. They are don't forget, Keir Starmer has no control of his backbenchers. There is no discipline in the party at all. And the Tory party is not the official opposition. The problem in our country at the moment, we only have one party in opposition, that's Reform UK, and they have less than 10 MPs. It's a lot on those MPs to hold this entire government to account on behalf of the entire country. And never in political history have we seen a situation like this. But the problem we have got is that for too long, unfortunately, people have been disengaged in politics. And one of the things I've been saying from the age of 13 is get involved in politics. I've said it to my mates, I've said it to my family, and people are now involved. Reform's membership surge, you can see that. Just locally, talking to people yesterday at the protest, how can I help you, Jamie, when there's an election? People are so determined now. All of the politicians, whether that's at a local level or a national level, they need to be wiped out. And we need a complete,
well, they can see as well
that
Reform can win. That's what they can see. So, I mean, it's not as if it's just a protest vote. It's not just a cause. It's something that they can actually take part in and win.
Of course, and also we are the only party, I think, that's got conviction. Everyone knows where we stand on issues. We're that party that you can trust our leader. He's said the same stuff repeatedly. He's been very, Nigel Farage is the Prime Minister in waiting in this country because people trust him, because whatever he's said has turned out to be true. Years ago when he was talking about
he's been saying this stuff for years.
Well, when the boats were coming over, people were calling me all sorts. Now look, I think we've got a real exciting opportunity. There is a bright future. There's light at the end of the tunnel, and as a Christian, I believe that light will always defeat darkness, and I can see it coming. But unfortunately, we've got a few years before that happens. But one thing I want to send as a message to anybody listening to this: please, please, please join those peaceful protests in your community, because it's important. We're allowed to peacefully protest. Ignore what the media are trying to tell you about it. They are not violent. They are peaceful protests, and people must attend them.
And the police calming down a bit around it all?
That's one thing I will say. Last time I was on this show, I was very angry with the handling of the police, the over-policing. It was actually embarrassing and quite cringy. I couldn't defend it. I will say I've been in touch with the Chief Constable. He's made lots of bad decisions, in my opinion, but they are listening. Far less police presence. If Essex Police are listening to this, please take down the stupid fence. We are not zoo animals in a cage. Please listen to that feedback. Women and children should not be behind bars because they want to peacefully protest. And the idea that it's for road safety is nonsense. I've been trying to get a fence outside a primary school in my area for 5 years because of safety, and the council aren't interested, so we're not buying that. Please take down those fences. But the police are listening, and there are far less police. And isn't it funny that you have less police in attendance and it's even more peaceful? As I said earlier, it was almost silent. Unfortunately, not every police officer is very good at their job. Same with any organisation. You go to a supermarket, not everyone that does your checking out of your food is polite. Not every police officer is excellent at their job. The ones yesterday they were engaging with us, they were laughing with us, they've been listening, so I think that is progress. But for the public to have faith in politicians and for the public to have faith in the police, they've got to listen and they've got to respond. So I would plea also that local politicians start to come and speak to their residents that they are elected to represent, not watching on the live stream.
OK, good stuff. Jamie, thanks very much for coming in.
Thanks,
Jamie
Mike.
McIver, councillor from Ongar there, talking about what happened in Epping over the weekend. If you were at any demonstration up and down the country, we'd love to hear from you. You know what to do, 0344 499 1000, because this is where the nation comes to talk. You can tell us and we can tell everybody else. This is Talk.
understand why people are drawn to reform. They are speaking for many people in this country right now.
What do you disagree with at the Reform UK side?
I think that Nigel, who I know reasonably well, is a good bloke who I would go to the pub with for a pint, but I don't think he is the man that you want in charge of your kids' school.
Why?
Or fixing hospitals. Because from the people that I speak to in Reform, I don't think there is any serious thought going into how do we actually solve the problems that are facing the country.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham. This is, of course, the home of common sense. It's the one place where everything happens. It's where the nation comes to talk as well. You know how to get in touch. You can text us on 87222. Find us on X at talkTV. And, of course, you can call us 0344 499 1000. We thought we'd check in with Yvette Cooper because here's what she has to say last week.
We'll provide regular updates for the public at every stage. That's why I'm confirming today that the pilot has now started and the first migrants who arrived on the small boat are now in detention. The transfers to immigration removal centres are underway as we speak, so we won't provide operational details at this point that criminal gangs can simply use and exploit.
Yeah, regular updates we're supposed to be getting. We haven't had one since Friday. It's now Monday. It's August 11th, actually. So I'm not quite sure when the next regular update will come. But surely it'll be soon, because otherwise it wouldn't really be called regular, would it? It would be called irregular. A bit like the migrants. There we are. Let's talk to Catherine Porter, independent energy analyst, of course. We've got much to talk about, including a boiler tax, which is on the way, and Elon Musk wanting to sell power to UK households. But first, we've found another Jurgen clip. This is Jurgen Meyer, the man who's from GB Energy, of course. They've just done a deal with some Highlands and Islands Enterprise Association up in Scotland to do very little of anything. He was in Oslo, apparently, in February. Check this out.
Well, I'm here at the Oslo Energy Forum, and it's a fascinating discussion about how we as an industry are going to master this revolution for clean power. Now, what is fascinating is that, without a doubt, people here at this forum are saying we in the UK are leaders in the pack. We've got the biggest offshore wind market in the whole world in the United Kingdom, and we have a mission to accelerate clean power at an incredible pace. Now, here is the second really interesting thing, and that is we in the UK can't do it without the partners here in Norway. Norway is massively invested in UK's clean power revolution. Companies like Equinor and Statkraft investing in our carbon capture, in our offshore wind, in new technologies like floating offshore wind, all creating clean power for us in Great Britain and creating British jobs for British people.
This will be the same Norway that's selling us petrol, presumably, and oil from the North Sea, where we also have the ability to do so, but have chosen not to. Catherine Porter, very good morning to you, Catherine.
Good morning.
I'm afraid Jurgen gets more and more deranged with every sort of clip that we find of him. You know, there he is in Oslo, who we're actually importing oil from Norway, despite the fact that we've got more or less the same shared oil and gas field that we could actually be plundering ourselves. And he says we've got a mission for clean energy. I don't hear any mission. I don't believe we voted for any mission on that, did we?
No, and the thing that he really missed out in his list of interesting things was that we have the most expensive industrial electricity prices in the developed world and the fourth most expensive domestic electricity prices in the developed world.
Yeah.
And that is correlated to the fact we have so much wind power. I wouldn't be boasting about that in his shoes.
No, absolutely not. Let's talk about this boiler tax, which is under the new Ed Miliband net zero drive. He's basically trying to convince everybody to get rid of the gas boiler and get a heat pump, but that's not going very well, is it?
No, it's not. I mean, last year we passed the incredible milestone of 250,000 heat pumps installed across the country. Obviously, we've got about 23 million households, so that's a very, very low percentage of the total number of households having a heat pump. The government's target is to install 600,000 a year. We're barely managing a tenth of that, and we only have about a tenth of the installers that we'd need to achieve that target. But so in response to this not going so well, the government has increased and extended the grants that are available, but they only cover the cost of the heat pump itself and not the ancillary works, which can be very expensive, such as installing larger radiators, new pipe work, better insulation, and so on. And of course, many people just don't want a heat pump because of the cost of electricity. The operating costs can be high. So now he's going to punish the people that sell boilers by saying if they don't sell enough heat pumps, they will be fined. And the boiler manufacturers think that they won't be able to sell the heat pumps because people don't want them, and because there aren't enough people to install them. And so they're basically factoring in those fines and adding them onto the price at which they'll sell the boilers that people do want.
Yeah, it is mad, isn't it? I mean, the more you step back and look at it, the more crazy it is. I'll tell you what I've noticed this past weekend. Everywhere I've gone, I've noticed more and more sort of electric charge points being installed in various places. I went past a McDonald's the other day, and in the car park they've installed a load of these charge points, but none of them were in use. There was nobody actually charging their cars. You know, I've seen more petrol stations now installing them where people can go and plug themselves in instead of actually buying petrol. But again, you don't see anybody on them.
No, and they have quite low performance rates in terms of actually functioning. Ones that do function in places like motorway service stations, they find people with, queuing up to have to use them. Yeah. If you want to fill up your car with petrol, you drive up, you put it in your car, it takes minutes. Particularly if you pay at the pump, you can be in and out in 5 minutes. Yeah. You're never going to be able to do that with an electric car.
No, that is the problem. And what about this story about Elon Musk and Tesla thinking about trying to get into Britain with some an electricity supply company? They say they want to take on some of the bigger companies here, such as Octopus and British Gas.
Well, it's kind of funny that they're trying to take on Octopus because they're basically going to try and go head-to-head with Octopus at its own game, which is offering these agile tariffs, these flexible time of use tariffs centered around car charging. But I don't know that he's going to find it particularly easy. Electricity and gas supply in Britain is a very low margin business. He thinks that he's going to be able to exploit these variable tariffs to be able to offer grid services, but the value of those services is very low. Yeah. Typically, the savings that you can achieve are, of the orders of pence. And the people who buy Teslas in this country are not people who are very motivated by saving a few pennies here and there. So I'm not sure that this is really going to work very well for him. No. Well, much doesn't work that well for Elon Musk, but he sort of figures it out in the end, doesn't he? I think it seems like a pretty toxic environment to get involved in the electricity market in this country because it's so overpriced and it's so ridiculous and filled with all manner of kind of trapdoors and potholes and, taxes here and stealth taxes. I mean, I don't even really know. I don't think most people know precisely what makes up our electricity bill, but we know that it doesn't reflect reality. No, it's actually crazy. We don't have what most people would recognise as a market for the sale of electricity to households and businesses. And people get quite upset about their suppliers, but actually the suppliers are really stuck between a rock and a hard place. It's a hugely regulated market and they have very little flexibility in terms of their charging structures, which means that they can't really innovate new products because they can't afford to lose money through experimentation. So you have very high electricity prices on the wholesale side, partly driven by the carbon tax, which is now quite a large percentage of the wholesale price. And with the whole alignment with the EU carbon pricing, that's just increasing. It's gone up quite significantly since January when Keir Starmer made that original announcement. Right. Then you have obviously the cost of bringing the electricity from the power stations to people's homes, the normal basic network costs and the basic costs that suppliers incur to do billing and all of that stuff. But then on top of that, you have all of the levies for renewable energy, you have the smart meter installation, you have all the extra grid connections and the extra balancing costs that you have from renewable energy. Then you have the energy company's obligation, where suppliers are supposed to try and help people install insulation, which isn't something that suppliers have any natural natural ability to do, really. That's a construction job, not an energy job. And then you have the warm homes discount, which is just straight up wealth redistribution.
Yeah.
The suppliers have to contact the DWP to find out which of their customers are eligible to receive this discount, and then they calculate how much that will cost, and then they increase the bills of all the other customers that they have so that they can give the discount to the eligible customers. So this, and then they charge the admin fee on top of that, because obviously it's expensive to administer this scheme. So you have all of this stuff piled on top of what should be basically a straightforward business, which is just procuring electricity and organising its delivery.
Just paying for
and
what
you have
you
all
use.
of this other stuff.
Well, yeah, just paying for what you use. But like I say, it's a sort of bewildering number of stealth taxes and probably more to come, right?
Yes, well, so Ed Miliband wants to take a large part of his £22 billion carbon capture schemes through electricity bills. So that will be yet another levy added onto bills that suppliers have the headache of administering, and obviously consumers are left paying. And it's worth noting as well that if Rachel Reeves wants to increase taxes through the Treasury, there's quite a lot of scrutiny of that. You've got a lot of people like the IFS and the various other bodies who will pore over those taxes. They will look at the impacts that's likely to have on the economy, on living standards and all the rest of it. Ed Miliband is imposing these stealth taxes, and it doesn't attract anything like the same level of scrutiny.
No, it's extraordinary, isn't it? Well, he never comes on my show, but we'll try and get him on and answer for it. We'll see what we can do. Catherine, good to speak to you. Thank you very much indeed. Catherine Porter, independent energy analyst. Coming up in the next hour, we'll get more of your voice notes. Mark Littlewood joins us as well. Jack Elsom here, political editor of The Sun too. And Mike Neville, retired Scotland Yard detective, will talk to us about that Palestine protest as well. Keep your messages coming in. This is Morning Glory, back after the news.
My message to people smugglers is this. I think smashing the gangs is a deterrent. Smash the gangs. Smash the people smuggling gangs.
People smuggling puns.
He couldn't even smash an avocado for a piece of toast.
Or the people... What would that... The people...
I think smashing the gangs is a deterrent. Well, it might be if you smashed any, if you found any.
The people smash... Those... The smash...
And he hasn't smashed anything. I mean, literally all he does is he smashes records every sort of couple of weeks, when more and more people come in a period of 24 hours.
Smash the gangs that are running this vile trade.
You're never going to smash the gangs. That's something that basically is impossible. The gangs are like the Hydra. You cut the head off and another two grow.
So I did write to ministers and say that I wasn't convinced that smashing the gangs was the right sort of way of thinking about things.
We will smash the gangs that undermine our security.
Keir Starmer has just tweeted 15 minutes ago. He says, I know you're angry about immigration. I get it. We will smash the people smuggling gangs at source. Maybe I'll just read it all in his accent, shall I?
There is no return to freedom of movement. We have left the EU. I do not accept that prevents us working with other police units here, with prosecutors here, to smash the gangs.
Well, I'm sure the smuggling gangs are absolutely quaking in their boots now. Keir Starmer is on their case. Solving this issue, smashing the gangs, is that the impossible dream, Tom?
It really seems beyond him at the minute, I have to say.
We're going to get the evil people smugglers and we're going to smash them and we're going to put them in jail. That will solve the migrant crisis.
Prime Minister Keir Starmer's promise to smash the gangs has resulted in just 5 convictions. Hurrah for operating small boats.
So what he really wants to say is that this policy of smashing the gangs is a total and utter disaster. There isn't a cat in hell's chance that it's going to work. You just can't say it.
It's crap. That's what he's basically saying.
I know you're angry about immigration. I get it. Mark my words, I will take back control of our borders. That means cutting migration, ending the use of asylum hotels, and ramping up our efforts to stop small boat crossings.
It's like a parallel universe, the real world, as told by the impressive David Bolt, and Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves' fantasy world.
We will smash the people smuggling gangs at source.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham. It is, of course, Monday, the 11th of August, and it is set fair, ladies and gentlemen. It's going to be a beautiful day. We'll warn you later about all the terrible things that might happen because of the scorched earth policy of some of the meteorological types who are out there. This from Kev, who says, Mike, I see they're using the 70s porn movie music on Jürgen's video. Yeah, when he was in Oslo. A good place for it, I suppose. Norway, you know what they're like. And apparently he's signed up to all sorts of partnerships with Norway in Oslo. Nobody knows why. Because supposedly it's called GB Energy, isn't it? Front page of the Daily Express has got councils claim whole streets are offered for use by migrants. Entire streets being lined up, particularly in Kent, to accommodate asylum seekers because, of course, as more and more protests happen around the country, the government is desperately trying to figure out a way of moving these migrants out of the hotels but into what are called HMOs, houses of multiple occupancy. That's what it means. It means that basically you've got a 4-bedroom house maybe, but you end up with putting 8 migrants in it and 2 to a room. They live on the street. Who knows what they do for work? Who knows whether they work illegally? Who knows how they live? Who knows how much money will be given to them? But according to some Reform councillors, £500 million has been set aside in order for that to happen. Up and down the country, it won't just be in Kent. It will be, I'm sure, in other parts of the country because we just heard from Jamie McIver, Essex councillor, who was at the Epping protest at the weekend. They're still trying to get the Bell Hotel closed down. They may well succeed in doing that, but if it is closed down, where do those migrants go? And that is a question. We've asked for you to get in touch if you were at any of these protests over the course of the weekend. Tony has been in touch. He was in Bristol. Let's have a listen.
Morning, Mike. Tony from North Somerset. You asked us to call in and talk to you about our protests in Bristol. Just going to mention, it was peaceful. It was a peaceful protest in Bristol. I couldn't believe it. The only thing that laid down was the left-wing and Green councillors calling all the mothers and grandmothers Nazis, fascists and racists. I did post a video on X, but no one's picked up the story. Keep up the good work.
Tony, thanks very much indeed. Yeah, this is the problem. You've ended up with a whole situation where the political kind of left are calling mothers and their children and their families, you know, Nazi scum. That's really not the way to go, is it? The police, as we just learned from Jamie McIver in Essex, have finally learned to be a bit more softly, and to have a slightly more user-friendly approach rather than sort of cracking a few heads just because they can. The front page of The Sun has got dinghy migrants get dinghy days out, believe it or not. This is an incredible one, exclusive by Thomas Godfrey. Migrants arriving on small boats are being offered cut-price dinghy days out, funded by taxpayers. They're also getting free swimming sessions, they're getting discounted bike use, they're getting discounted electric bikes if they want to ride around delivering food on them, of course. That's what they do illegally. And of course they're also being offered massages, trips to football, trips to the cinema, all sorts of things that they can do for less than the cost that you have to pay when you do it. And finally, 150,000 social care migrants are missing. This according to the front page of the Daily Telegraph. 150,000 migrants that came to the UK on social care visas have simply disappeared. The government's got no idea how many of them are still here. They've got no idea how many of them are still working in the sector. And they've actually got no idea whether they've even left the country. I mean, it's quite hard to believe how useless it is. Now, just to remind you all of how hot it's going to be, it could reach 32 apparently today and tomorrow. Certainly in the southeast of England, it will be warm for most of the country. This is what they say on what can only be described. I don't like to use the word mainstream. This is Sky News, right? That's what Europe looks like according to Sky News. Now, if you're not watching this, this is like a sort of a conglomeration of yellow, dark yellow, red, dark red. You know, it looks as though, for all intents and purposes, it's like the Ring of Fire. You know, and they talk about the tectonic plates of Europe going all the way down Italy, where they have occasional eruptions at Vesuvius and they have occasional earthquakes. There was an earthquake in Turkey yesterday. But it looks, for all the world, like the most dangerous planet. I mean, if you looked at that through a telescope, you'd go, crikey, is that Mars? Or is that, you know, one of those really, really hot countries next to the sun? Because it looks as though it's literally full of really dangerous gases. And, you know, if you lived there, surely you wouldn't last more than about 5 seconds because you'd be completely burned to a crisp. It's like a nuclear bomb's gone off. It's a nice day. It's the summer. Relax. Calm. Put some shorts on. Go and sit in a pub garden. See if they'll let you have a cigarette if you want. Obviously, we don't encourage smoking, but you know what I mean. It's really not that bad. Let's talk to Mark Littlewood, Director of Popular Conservatism UK. Mark, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike. Good to be with you.
I mean, it does beg a belief the way that they get over the top with this stuff now, doesn't it? I mean, that looks to me like one of those pieces of film that you get from, you know, one of those really, really, really hot planets that you can't live on because it's ridiculously hot and you would vaporise as soon as you open the door.
Yeah, worse than that, Mike. I was trying to work out whether nuclear war had already broken out, or whether this was some sort of alien invasion, which had not been fully reported by the media.
Oh man, it's really bad.
Yeah, I mean, it's what did you say it's likely to be today in London and the South East?
About
32?
32 maybe. Yeah.
Glorious weather.
It was a beautiful weekend. You know, I had a lovely time. Was down at the beach with the dog both days, and you know, nothing to complain about at all. It was summer, for heaven's sake. Let's talk about some of the big stories in the papers this morning, though. Front page of the Daily Telegraph, away from the migrants, which has got plenty of coverage. Keir Starmer hid £30 billion cost of the Chagos surrender and actually misled Parliament. Labour ministers are now being accused of misleading Parliament. This is quite a serious story.
It is a very serious story. All sorts of numbers have been batted around on how much this surrender of the Chagos Islands was going to cost. And the Telegraph now say that they've come across government documents suggesting that Keir Starmer, surprise, surprise, has understated the cost by a factor of 10. I mean, it's a scandal either way, isn't it, Mike? Because the idea that we would pay money to give away sovereign and strategically important territory is absurd. You would have thought it would be us receiving a ton of money, not giving away a single penny. But it looks like some sort of accountancy trick played by Keir Starmer, and how inflation is calculated and the rest of it means that the cost is likely to be nearer 35 billion than I think it's 3.4 billion that he claimed. The Conservatives were claiming it would cost 30 billion and they were sort of laughed at by the government. It looks like it's going to be even higher than that.
Well, that is the thing. I mean, look, we've got a clip here of what he said, because as ever with Keir Starmer, he's always so kind of dismissive of any kind of criticism, and but he's almost sneering about it. Have a look at this.
This cost is part and parcel of using Britain's global reach to keep us safe at home. And it will be less than the cost of running one aircraft carrier for a year. Today's agreement is the only way to maintain the base in the long term.
Yeah, except that wasn't true. And if he knew it wasn't true, I would say that is an incredibly serious thing to have said.
Yes, I agree with that. I mean, what we're seeing here is the true cost, and indeed, Mike, the idiocy of Keir Starmer's ludicrously slavish commitment to anything that even smells like international law.
Yeah.
So if some sort of international court somewhere, probably a fairly tin pot court, sort of slightly suggests that maybe in the due course of time the UK should surrender its claims to the Chagos Islands, then Keir Starmer and his mate, the Attorney General, leap on this immediately and say this has got to be done forthwith, got to be complied with yesterday. It was ludicrous. If you want to ensure that Britain is safe, we should have kept that territory and taken a much more cynical approach to international law judgments. There's nobody to hand it back to. It's been given away despite the protestations of the Chagosians. It makes Britain's strategic defence position weaker, not stronger, and we're paying for the privilege. Look, if it was a trade-off that Mauritius had given us £35 billion, well, you might say, well, on the one hand, we're losing sovereignty over this site, but on the other hand, we've got a whole shed load of money coming in. But it's both. It's a double whammy. We're surrendering it and paying for the privilege of surrendering it. The lunacy of our, or at least Keir Starmer's addiction to international law in all of its weird forms is exposed brutally here.
Yes, as is indeed his complete and utter inability to negotiate anything You know, everything that he negotiates seems to end up being a worse deal for this country than it was before. You know, in the same way that he's now negotiating with the European Union for a reset, as it's being rather euphemistically called. But what so far has happened is that we're going to be tying ourselves to their food standards laws, which is going to cost our farmers money. We're tying ourselves to a new fishing treaty, which is going to cost our fishermen money. We're going to find ourselves having some kind of carbon emissions tax because we're aligning ourselves with them on carbon as well. So, you know, and even the US trade deal and the Indian trade deal, both of which had, you know, worse outcomes for us than it did for them.
Yeah. You get the impression the Prime Minister doesn't much like Britain, don't you, Mike? Or at least doesn't trust its institutions.
Well, he keeps trying to change it as well.
Yeah, exactly right. And I mean, I think it was a few years ago in an interview he was asked, was he more a Westminster man or a Davos man?
Yeah.
He preferred Westminster to Davos, the gathering of the international corporate and political elite, and he didn't blink before saying Davos.
Yeah.
So it's unsurprising if you've got a Prime Minister who, at best, is sceptical about Britain running its own affairs and, at worst, is hostile to Britain running its own affairs, that every negotiation isn't really a negotiation, a sort of tough, across-the-table, real firm arm wrestle. It's a surrender.
Yeah.
And that's what we're seeing in more or less each and every one of this government's interactions internationally. It's a tragedy. And it's going to be bad for Britain over the long term, not just our defence interests, which I believe are harmed by us having less control over the Diego Garcia base on the Chagos Islands, but also in our economic interests. You just highlighted there a whole bunch of new regulations which are going to come in. I mean, you would think that the UK was under-regulated, awash with cash, and the government had tons of money to fritter away by the way this government's behaving. Well, I'm afraid the opposite is true. We're already too highly regulated without the EU trying to impose more red tape on us. We are broke. We are getting broker by the day because whatever the black hole was that Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves inherited from the Conservatives, they've kept digging and that black hole is bigger.
Yeah.
And I'm afraid, Mike, everything's going to get a lot worse before it starts getting better.
Well, it really is. I mean, we discovered, I think, back end of last week, did we not, that a £22 billion black hole, which never really existed, which they said was the cause of all sorts of problems for them because the Tories left it for them, has now ballooned to 50 billion. But they don't say that bit's our fault. They just kind of go, it's magically turned up into a £50 billion black hole. But now with Chagos, you know, presumably that means it's 85 billion.
Yeah, I guess if you accounted for all of the Chagos deal this year, I suppose they could spread it out over a longer period of time. But they, on the economy, Mike, I mean, they're finding to their cost, but I think to nobody else's surprise, that if your solution to everything is just to dial up tax, two things happen. Firstly, people respond differently once their tax rates change. They might retire early or not strive for promotion, or if you're hitting the rich very hard, you might leave the country. In fact, millionaires are fleeing Britain at a faster rate than virtually any other country in the world. So they've dialed up tax without getting any revenue in. They don't have any real plans or can't pilot through any way of saving any money. I mean, this is only a few weeks ago, of course, that their attempt to save what basically amounts to pennies in the pound on welfare was blocked entirely by their backbenchers. So the welfare bill, if anything's going to go higher. And then they have a whole range of weird and wonderful things like surrendering the Chagos Islands that they want to fritter away billions on. So this, I'm afraid, is the road to ruin. We've got to have a big conversation about how we're going to reset Britain. I think we've got to restore a lot of our institutions. We've got to be a lot tougher with the international community rather than bowing down to it. And we're going to have to find some pretty serious savings in terms of public expenditure. If we don't do that, we're on a one-way track to being the 2025 equivalent of Greece. We will go bust.
Yeah, exactly right. Although even Greece seems to have managed to get a handle on how to deal with illegal migrants better than we have. There's a story in The Sun today from Crete.
That's a low bar, Mike.
Yeah, well, true. Where they've actually managed to reduce the number of boats arriving on our Crete shores to zero. Basically because they said, look, if you arrive here from North Africa, we will arrest you, we will detain you, and we will send you back. You will not ever become somebody who can have asylum in Greece at all, I'm afraid. And so they've stopped coming and they've started going somewhere else. But just when you thought I was going to give you some good news, I'm afraid, Mark, I've got some further bad news for you on this in the running of Britain. Front page of the Daily Mail, 26,000 prisoners freed early by Labour. So since they've been in charge, they've literally released hundreds of people every single week, to the point where 26,000 have now been walking the streets, including hundreds of serious offenders who were handed sentences of more than a decade behind bars. An extraordinary figure.
It is extraordinary, and what I'm trying to get to the bottom of is what obligate are these people just now free to, mingle in society again?
Yeah.
I mean, I think if you are going to release people early, it needs to be under very strict provision. I don't know, an ankle bracelet, and you can't leave your house or some such like. And the justice system, yet another part of Britain that's completely broken. Violent offenders released early. But if you say something a bit off colour on Twitter, expect a knock on your door by PC Plod. And if it's really off colour, expect to face a long jail term yourself. We seem to be sending the wrong people to prison and releasing the wrong people way too early. So public faith, I think, is, we were hearing just before the news, Mike, about the protests that, ordinary people are now making, ordinary women and children outside migrant hotels. The British public, I think, have now had it right up to here. They've had more than enough of this. They realise the system is broken. They're pleading for some big changes to get our justice system back on track, our immigration system back on track. I mean, Mike, you mentioned Greece as a comparator. A friend of mine was talking to a former Greek immigration minister. They are really tough if you turn up at Greece and try and pull the wool over their eyes. If you say that you've come from this particular city or this particular town, or you're persecuted for this particular reason, you are very seriously cross-examined. Here, we take everything on faith. Not only do we take it on faith, we then give you a hotel room. And as you were saying earlier, Mike, what's covered on the front page of The Sun, you don't just get a hotel room, you can get some sort of days out at the football, or tickets to the cinema, or all the rest of it. We've got to completely change the way we do business, both in terms of justice and immigration. People out there in the real world are completely aware the system is absolutely broken. And our politicians, I'm afraid, don't seem to have the first clue about how to fix it.
No, they really don't. And I'm afraid that's a rather unfortunate place to end, but that's what we're going to do. Mark, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Mark Littlewood, Director of Popular Conservatism UK. This from Emma, who says, I read this morning that Angela Rayner wants to tax your garden shed. I have a dilapidated garden shed that mice may well live in, so I guess I wouldn't be surprised if they discovered mice. They would start taxing how many mice I have living in my shed. Well, very possibly. Paul in Essex says, Mike, you report the illegal immigrants are getting half-price events to attend. Who's paying the other half of the cost? The answer is the British taxpayer. They're getting everything for free. The phrase, there is no such thing as a free lunch, doesn't apply to illegal immigrants under the current and previous governments. That's a very good point, because if we're giving them a 50% discount, at the end of the day, that means the other 50% is still being paid by them with money that we've given them. So we're subsidising all of it, effectively, 100% of it. So never mind the half-price cinema tickets, they're basically free. So we're giving people just free stuff. It's unbelievable. Let's get a voice note from Mark.
Good morning, Mike. It's Mike from Staffordshire. I've just been thinking, when the government, disgraceful government, puts all these illegals into houses and they're planning on buying streets and tower blocks, it's not going to end there, because they're not working, or not supposed to be working legally, so they're going to be paying for the gas, their utilities, the food bills, the council taxes, insurance, all this kind of stuff. It's just absolute madness.
It is madness, absolute and utter madness. I wonder if there's been any kind of regular update from Yvette Cooper. We'll check it out during the break and see whether she's said anything at all. This is, of course, Morning Glory.
whether it would help, an ID card would help control the illegal working of asylum seekers, but actually we couldn't see why it would help. So for lots of reasons, but fundamentally the fact that we don't trust this government, do we, to have any more information about our lives. And just one more point to mention as well, the recent online safety bill debate also has made us, because that's a complete smokescreen for controlling free speech.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's coming up to 24 minutes past 8. It is, of course, Monday, August the 11th. It's going to be a hot one, although I've been told by Anne in County Down it's raining, so don't get too worked up about that. The Chagos Island deal will cost the taxpayer $35 billion. Disgraceful, says Tony. Absolutely right. And so many of you have got things to say about that. Right now, though, it's time to talk to Jack Elsom, who is, of course, political editor at The Sun. A big piece by Matt Goodwin, guest columnist in The Sun today. The far right isn't driving unrest. Labour is. He basically says if you want a sense of how insane things in Britain have become and how quickly they are spiralling out of control, then consider what we have learned in just the last 2 days alone. In Epping, an Ethiopian asylum seeker is accused of sexually assaulting a local schoolgirl. In Stockport, a migrant from Sudan staying in a hotel paid for by British taxpayers is accused of trying to kidnap a 10-year-old girl. In Nuneaton, 2 people accused of kidnapping, strangling and raping a 12-year-old girl. In Lambeth, an asylum seeker from Pakistan stands accused of raping an 8-year-old girl. You know, this list goes on and on and on. And you wonder why so many protests are going on up and down the country. We've heard from Leeds, from Bristol. We've heard from Jamie McIver over in Epping, of course, in Essex. Let's talk to Jack Elsom now and find out what is going on. Jack, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. How are you?
Very well indeed. I mean, Matt's piece, together with your splash today about the craziness of some of these councils up and down the country handing out free stuff to asylum seekers, is going to do nothing but enrage people, really, isn't it?
Oh, of course. I mean, if people can get any more angry than they already are, that is, because I think that the public's patience has just totally snapped. I mean, it's a typically brilliant piece by Matt, who I think articulates those concerns of what I think now is the overwhelming majority of the British people. And I think it gets the nub of a point which is really sort of bubbling up over the past few months, that this illegal migration crisis has really turned into a national security crisis, because if you do not know who's coming over the channel on those small boats, almost 50,000 since Labour got into power last July, then obviously you are going to get a load of wrong-uns. And as we have seen, asylum seekers have been arrested and charged, many recent high-profile cases, and people, especially women, girls, are getting absolutely sick to the back teeth of it. Then you get added the insult to injury of the Sun splash today, which is revealing a whole host of goodies which are handed to asylum seekers when they come over here. We've picked out a case in Rotherham, which is that asylum seekers up there are getting cut price dinghy deals. So if they want to go out and potter around their local river on a boat, then actually they can do it for much cheaper than someone in this country. And it's probably the biggest warped sense of irony I've come across for a very long time, and will absolutely enrage people. And I think that what sort of message does this show? That if you come into this country illegally, jump the queue, break in, you already get entitled to free bed and board, hotels, HMOs, the rest of it.
Yeah.
You then get basically platter of goods and perks alongside it. Whereas if you are a tax-paying, law-abiding person that's lived here for a very long time, you pay full whack. It is absolutely stinks, and I think that most people now are just past the point of their patience snapping. They are just exasperated. But what is even more shocking, I think, really, is that people aren't even surprised anymore. You know, these stories are shocking by their nature, but people just feel like they've been taken for a ride for so long now that these cases, people just go, oh, yeah, another one. And that's why I think it's really, really damaging.
Yeah, it really is. And as somebody pointed out on the show this morning, you know, it may well be that they're getting half-price cinema tickets and half-price swimming and massages and all the rest of it, but actually, it's actually all free because they haven't got any money of their own, because the bit that they're maybe paying for is also supplied by us.
Yeah, totally. So, you know, essentially what they're doing is they're double dipping on the taxpayer purse. You know, they're getting money from us and then using that and getting half-price stuff. At a time where many people up and down the country are feeling totally squeezed. It's interesting, though, because over the past few years, if you look at polls about what people really care about in this country, it's tended to be the economy at the top and immigration or health a close second. Immigration in the past few months has shot up to the top even more than cost of living and the economy. I think that's because people are realising that a lot of the issues, not all, to do with the sort of strain on public services in this country is due to legal and illegal migration, and people are just absolutely sick of it. And Matt Goodwin in his piece talks about how the social contract between governments and voters has been totally frayed, actually to the point of almost breaking point, because successive governments have come in promising voters they will get a handle on legal migration and illegal migration. And at every single point, they have broken those promises. You know, all the way back, really, to David Cameron promising to get legal migration down to the tens of thousands. 2018 is when we had the first small boat crossings come across. Sajid Javid then said that he would end the crisis in a few weeks. You know, 7 years later, and we've had 70,000 people come into this country. So it really does take the mickey. And I think that we are now at the point where I think voters are just increasingly just at their wits' end with this entire scandal, and are feeling that no matter where they put their X in the ballot box, politicians of all stripes are just going to let them down, and that's a really dangerous point for the country.
Yeah, it really is. And on Friday, we had this kind of rather lame idea of people being detained for the first time. You know, both Keir Starmer and Yvette Cooper made a big song and dance about it. They put out a couple of videos, you know, menacing-looking, vans being driven around, ridiculously kind of, hyper-inflated music being played over what looked like locking people up into a room. But, meanwhile, we haven't heard anything since. Yvette Cooper gave an interview on Friday to say that she was going to give regular updates as to what was happening to these people as they were being detained, where they were being detained. But so far, since Friday, we've not had one.
Yeah, I think we're probably going to have to wait a few weeks until we get some kind of white smoke about the first person being sent back. But you're right in the fact that often what happens is that headline grabbing, big announcement is blared out by the Home Office, and then you hear diddly squat about it for the next few weeks. And I think they just think that they've got to win and therefore it can all go away. I hope that doesn't happen. I hope we generally do see numbers going back. But it needs to be big numbers. At the moment, this pilot is going to send back 50 a week. That just does not even scratch the surface about the numbers coming here. I think 800 a week coming every...
435 people came on Saturday.
I mean, totally. And so it really doesn't even touch the sides. And I think there's a danger for them. If they do trumpet it so much and actually more keep coming, then they just got egg in their faces. And I think that's the danger for them with this policy. It does, listen, if it works, fantastic. If it does break the business model, as they say, fantastic. I think most people have serious doubts about this just because of the scale, Mike. The scale is so small fry that there's still going to be a massive market and massive demand for channel crossings. And the smuggling gang is going to fill it.
And it's not reducing any numbers, because even those who get thrown out are going to be replaced by others. So it's not actually, what it's going to do is be a net addition to migrants, and we'll have more migrants in the country rather than less. So it won't work because if the definition of it working is not reducing any of the numbers, it's increasing them.
Well, this is it. We call it a one-in, one-out scheme. We sort of follow the government's language on that, but actually, it's not a one-in, one-out, is it? It's a one-in, one-in.
Yeah,
because we're still getting one back from France, and it's not even that. It's 800 in, one out, whatever it is, because it's obviously you have lots of people coming into the country, way more than going to leave, and even then we have someone come over from France. So you're right. It's at the moment it doesn't seem like it's really going to cut the mustard, but I guess we'll have to wait and see when that inevitable update comes.
Well, we will indeed. Jack Elson, political editor of The Sun. Thank you very much indeed. Let's hear from Mark on the broken borders.
Hi, Mike. Mark in Southend here. In my local area, Rooms in HMOs are about £700 upwards. The amount of benefit that you get is about £400 because it's a room and not a flat. So that means you have a £300 a month shortfall, or what we call a top-up. What I'd like to know is, these migrants are being put into HMOs. So do they have a top-up? Who's covering all the extra rent on these HMOs?
Well, that's a very good point. I mean, who knows who's paying the extra rent, but it'll probably be us, won't it? Who else is it going to be? It'll be the local council by us, or it'll be the Home Office by us. Let's find out what's going on the Sun Letters page.
Letters from the Sun, the page where you tell Britain what to think. For more, visit thesun.co.uk.
And people are getting worked up today about foreign prisoners. This one from Jackie in Birmingham. So Keir Starmer's government reckons it will sort out the problem of foreign criminals clogging up our jails by deporting them after sentencing. Don't make me laugh. Has the Prime Minister forgotten all his left-wing human rights lawyer friends who will be queuing up to represent those criminals? Also, let's not forget all the lily-livered judges who cannot see past all the flimsy excuses trotted out by these lawyers. I have more chance of flying to the moon than seeing these deportations. Well, I think a lot of people would agree. Stephen in County Durham says alarming figures show that 1 in 8 prisoners in England and Wales is foreign born, costing the UK taxpayer an estimated £580 million a year. The situation is just unsustainable. And so far from the government, all we have had is tough talk and no results. Swift deportation is indeed required. But for that to happen, we simply must avoid endless appeals and blocking of deportations under the Human Rights Act. Labour must act now. There is far too much at stake. Very true. It's coming up to, let's see, 8:34. Goodness me, the time is flying. We've got much more to do. Coming up, we're going to be talking to Henry Bolton. We'll find out from him what on earth is going on with these small boat migrants. They come in on a dinghy, then they get a free dinghy to ride around in whenever they want. Incredible.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 8:36. This, of course, is from Anne in Wales. She says, "Morning, Mike. My 82-year-old husband with dementia went into hospital last week. He was treated and slept on a chair. He was not alone, with mixed-sex wards of chairs and no curtains. Our sick can't get beds, but illegal migrants with their human rights get beds and luxuries. Where are the British people's human rights?" Well, a lot of people are asking me that question. And one here from Bill in Cheshire. "Sky News, ring of fire. But the good news is nobody will see this BS because nobody watches Sky News." Very true. We just keep an eye on it just to see who's popping up on it from time to time. 49,516 is the new official migrant tracker number of people who have come to this country since Keir Starmer became Prime Minister. It's going to edge over the 50,000 mark, obviously very soon, possibly as soon as today, when we find out how many people came on Sunday. 435 people came on Saturday. Just before we talk to Henry Bolton, OBE, let's get a voice note from Paul.
Good morning, Mike. I have a sister, 2 nieces and a great niece. that live in Farnborough, and they're now all in possession of personal attack, rape, panic alarms. And that would seem a sensible and a prudent move for people that live within close vicinity of illegal migrant HMOs and hotels. You've only got to look to Sweden and Germany and other Nordic countries to see the number of rapes against vulnerable women and girls that have occurred since a mass illegal unwanted migration has taken place. This government and the police to a certain extent should hang their heads in shame for not protecting the most vulnerable in the country. The only net zero we need is net zero on illegal immigration. Great show. Have a good week, Mike. Good morning.
Paul, thank you very much indeed. Absolutely shocking, isn't it, when you hear things like that, that all of these women in his life, the ones that he knows, have all got rape alarms, effectively, for when they want to walk around their hometown because of all the migrants who have moved in. Absolutely amazing. Incredible. I must say, back in the 60s, we always had long summers of very hot weather, and there was no panic, says David. We had bad winters as well, and we still walked to school. The world is becoming full of wimps. Keep the good fight up. Yeah, absolutely right. Too true. Let's talk to Henry Bolton, OBE, International Border Control expert, of course, member of the SDP as well. Henry, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike. Morning.
You hear these stories now from people in various different parts of the country. We've got, protests going on everywhere from Newcastle down to Bournemouth. We've got them going on in Essex. We've got them happening in Leeds. We've got them happening in Birmingham, in Norfolk, Bristol. Every place you think of, practically, because these people have been dispersed all over the country without a care in the world. And the government's now beginning to realise it's made a massive, massive mistake.
Well, is it really realising it's made a mistake? I hope so, Mike.
I think they have. I think they've suddenly. Well, look at the way that Keir Starmer and Yvette Cooper now talk about illegal migration. They talk about it the way you and I have been talking about it for ages. They talk about people being kicked out of the country. They never used to.
Well, Mike, I'm going to be convinced that they've learnt the lesson, or they've got the lesson when they start to respond properly and start delivering a real effect on the problem. Politicians are very good at reflecting something that the public are saying back at the public, and that's different to actually doing something about it. I still don't believe that Keir Starmer and Yvette Cooper really are thinking like you and I. And the reason I don't think that is because we've got councils and Labour-run councils around the country, not just Labour, but Green as well, who are calling themselves cities or towns or boroughs of sanctuary. They're actually encouraging people. They are giving the people who come into their areas additional benefits. They're doing absolutely nothing to deter the flow. And if we do not make the United Kingdom an unattractive destination, people will still want to come. They will still want to come illegally, and there will still be a demand that criminals will seek to meet to move these people illegally. If they want to, if Keir Starmer was serious about smashing the gangs, serious about stopping illegal immigration, then Keir Starmer would be speaking to his party at all levels and saying, damn well stop this encouragement of what is illegal movement. But he's not doing that. He'd also be coming up with realistic planning. I mean, the one in, one out scheme is not one in, one out at all. It's
nobody out, effectively, is it?
I've said repeatedly, it's one out and one back in. We send France one, we get one back.
Yeah.
The whole thing is ridiculous. There's all sorts of administrative reasons why this is not going to work well, even with 50 a week. And where are these people being detained? How many have been detained on the 6th, 7th of August? Who knows? There's no transparency coming out of the government, and I suspect there's no transparency coming out of the government because they themselves aren't convinced that this is going to work at all well. It's just another scheme that they're throwing at the British public. The only thing that this government can do to convince me otherwise is show a demonstrable impact on the number of boats crossing the English Channel, and I don't see that happening any day.
No, I mean, funnily enough, in the Sun, there's a big spread on Crete. I don't know if you probably get that far back into the paper, but basically, in Crete, it's not one in, one out. It's one in and none. It's none in, and nobody's allowed, basically, since they decided in July to ban anybody claiming asylum in Crete. The boats have simply stopped coming. because what they were doing was arresting people, detaining them and deporting them straight away.
Indeed, and there's the discussion at the moment about deportation of foreign national offenders in UK jails.
Yeah.
Well, look, this has been law for probably 20 months or so now. Since 2007, I think, there has been a statutory duty on the Home Secretary to deport foreign national offenders. The reason that they haven't been been deported in that time is that successive Home Secretaries have come up, as we all know, with activists and lawyers launching appeals, mainly under Article 8 of the ECHR, which is about right to settled life. So these people claim, I might have been here illegally, I might be committing all sorts of heinous crimes, but I've got a settled life, I've got children here, and they're all going into UK schools. And that's enough for the courts. Well, countries like Denmark and Sweden have got around this now. They've not left the ECHR. I actually advocate leaving the ECHR, but an alternative is to follow what Sweden and Denmark have done, which is narrow the window. What the Article 8 of the ECHR says is that there has to be a method of assessing this person's sort of their integration, their security threats, and so on. Now, we've got a bloody wide open door when it comes to that. It's the Scandinavians have narrowed that right down. So back in December, they deported somebody who was born, he's second-generation immigrant, but he was Ghanaian, and they deported him because he'd been committing offences, but they could demonstrate that he had not made any effort to integrate, even second generation, born in Denmark. So the others have acted. We've got successive governments who quite simply have failed to exercise the leadership necessary to solve the problem that the British public continually demand that they do solve. And these protests, Mike, are going to escalate, I believe now. I think they are not going away.
Yeah.
They are going to escalate, Keir Starmer. They are going to escalate until such time as you actually make an operational impact on this problem.
Yes.
I'm sorry, people aren't going to go away any longer.
No, they're not. I mean, the good thing is that they are being more and more peaceful, it would seem. I mean, I was just talking to Jamie McIver, who was in from Essex, where he said it was actually so peaceful at one point at the weekend outside of the Bell Hotel in Epping that it was really actually almost silent. It was almost like a silent protest. And the police have learned, it would seem, not to start roughing them up. And police, it would seem, have calmly kind of just escorted them and made sure everything was fine. And as long as that's the case, then it might not stop, but it might not put enough pressure on the Prime Minister to do something about it, because he might think, well, they're not actually, because in some ways he would like it all to kick off so that he could sort of clamp down on it. But I wonder whether he's going to have the wherewithal to change his mind or do anything. I know they want to get them out of these hotels, but at the end of the day, it might actually get worse if they're all put in houses.
Well, indeed. I mean, what's happening is there are places that have been relatively untouched by the sort of dispersal of...
Not many.
Well, no, no, not now. And I think one of the things that's happening is rather quiet little areas that have been unaffected. Places like Newbury in Berkshire, where I was recently. People are they're very quiet, very sort of middle class, fairly affluent place. Everybody's been sort of in the past, well, what's the big problem? Well, now it turns out that the local authority apparently has taken over some housing development of affordable housing, centre of town, and now the town has become, I'm sorry to say, but visibly different. People are going, what's happened? It's waking people up. I'm very glad that the protesters have realised that themselves that violence and agitation is not the answer. But I think Keir Starmer won't listen until he has police commanders, perhaps, going back to him and saying, look, Prime Minister, this is not what you think it is. Right. And that's got to go through the Home Secretary. I genuinely don't think he's listening. I still
because in his heart of hearts he wants to be sort of performative and he wants to show that he's tough. I mean, we see these occasional videos that he puts out, and if you go on his Twitter, you can always see that there's something he's saying that he's clamping down on. But at the end of the day, everybody knows he's not really. Let's have a look and see if he's put anything out today. Yeah, here we go. He's put out this, I always pinpoint his first tweet of the day. For far too long, foreign criminals have been exploiting our immigration system, remaining in the UK for months or even years while their appeals drag on. That ends now. If foreign nationals break the law, they will be deported at the earliest opportunity. Well, at the earliest opportunity doesn't mean anything, does it?
No, and Mike, and that, you know, this decisive talk, this ends now. He knows it is not going to end now. Now is today. Now is now. It's not tomorrow. It's not next week. It's not next month. Not next year. Not in 5 years. Now is right this moment, and he knows that's not the case. So he's. I mean, does he take us for fools? The way an honest politician would talk would be saying, look, this is what we're doing. This is why we're hoping it's going to have an impact on the numbers. And these are the timelines that we expect to see that impact. But the man is you know, he churns out this stuff. And I like the way that you put that, you know, his first tweet of the day, because it's always going to be the same sort of nonsense.
Yeah, it is.
And nobody in this country takes that sort of thing seriously. So he's undermining himself anyway.
Well, that's it, because nobody believes a word he says, because, you know, he's been saying this rubbish for the whole year that he's been in, you know.
Correct.
And we've just found out that he's now turns out he told a load of lies about the Chagos Islands, and in fact it was going to cost us a lot more than $3.5 billion. It's more like $35 billion.
But this, even before the election, Mike, we heard all sorts of pledges from this government that they would do something or wouldn't do something, and then they've done a 180-degree turn on it once in government. This is a dishonest government. I mean, you've got to have integrity in leadership, and this government is demonstrating that it's lying to its own people. So it thinks it can just sort of smooth talk its way out of any situation, and we're all stupid enough to believe it. And, you know, this is why, and the Conservatives weren't a great deal better. They were better, but they weren't a great deal better.
No, but I mean, it has got significantly worse since Labour got in. And just to add insult to injury, I'm just to mention this one other thing before I let you go. The first migrant to be convicted of illegally working for Deliveroo since the Sun's probe has been fined. The bad news is he's only been fined 26 quid. Because it turns out that that's about 2 hours' pay for a Deliveroo driver, but he claimed that he was too broke and owed too much money to pay any more of a fine than that. So he's the first person in the past 6 months to turn up at court to face charges of working illegally. 3 others have been charged, but they didn't appear.
But this Mike, I mean, it's not too dissimilar, a different scale, to what I was saying about the Scandinavians with their legal approach.
Yeah.
They've got far tighter, far stricter guidance being issued to their courts from the Justice Ministry,
yes,
Sweden and Denmark. They've tightened it right up. So the courts now are, you know, they're draconian in the way that they are sentencing these people. Here, you know, we've got look, Mike, you know, we could talk about this forever. Our police are in a mess. Our courts are in a mess. Our borders are in a mess. Our government is lying to us. You know, the whole thing is broken. And I'm starting now not to talk so much about the actual incidents, because there are so many every day now, so many examples. What we need in this country is not performative politics, it's not rhetoric, it's not theatre, it's not lies, it's not showmanship, it's not, you know, great little sort of videos put together by a social media sort of you know, whiz, but right. it is statesman-like leadership. It is somebody with the strategic acumen and the eye for detail that's going to be able to pull all these things together. Because I've always said there is no silver bullets at solving this problem. It's about pulling together all of the justice, the policing, the law, you know, there's a whole range of diplomacy, foreign affairs. All of that has to be brought. I see no politician, no mainstream politician of any of the main parties, and I include Reform, that has got that acumen as demonstrating it. They're talking up the problem rather than addressing it, and it's starting to where do we go when no politician?
Well, this is the thing, you know, it all is rather meaningless. The problem is you just got to stop them coming. It's as simple as that. Henry, thanks very much indeed. Let's get a voice note from Mark.
Morning, Mike. It's Mark in Lancashire. I'm seeing quite a few comments from the usual suspects online and on TV saying that the theme park tickets and days out for these illegal dinghy migrants are justified and necessary because they need something to do so they don't get into so much trouble. We've got to do something for them, they're saying. So in my opinion, that something should be that they need to earn the keep. They're living here for free. They're getting food. They need to be out in supervised groups then, tidying up the place, clearing litter, clearing grass verges, doing gardening, planting flowers, making the local community look better, making things better from the local residents so they're earning the keep. That's what they need to be doing.
Well, they should be doing something useful as opposed to nothing useful and something dangerous, which seems to be what's going on at the moment. It's 8:52.
Thank you to the 10,000 plus people who signed my petition, says Fiona Braverman, objecting to these migrant hotel plans. Very pleased that the Home Office has listened to local people and local Conservative councillors and dropped plans to put illegal migrants and asylum seekers in the heart of Waterlooville.
You want to close the hotels, the government's closing the hotels.
Yeah, but they're also putting them into...
The demand was close the hotels, government's doing it.
Yeah. I'm not sure a lack of social housing as the net result of that is something people are necessarily going to welcome.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through, of course, until 10 o'clock. Liz in Norfolk says the crunch will come when the budget is announced. It's being talked up so that if it isn't as bad as expected, we will all jump for joy. I think it will be the straw that breaks the camel's back. Also, why is the migrant hotel budget never mentioned in the budget? Well, it kind of is. It just depends on how they get around to it. Let's talk now about this ridiculous protest at the weekend. Of course, mad acts of the people involved in Palestine Action, which has been prescribed as a terrorist organisation. The Times this morning's got a story quoting the police as basically saying that quelling the Palestine protest was an unrealistic task, according to Metropolitan Police. Let's talk to Mike Neville, retired Scotland Yard Detective Chief Inspector. Mike, very good morning to you.
Yeah, good morning, Mike.
They've arrested 532 people on terrorism offences, which, while obviously is part of what they should do, because that's what the law says they should do, it's kind of mad, isn't it? Because it means that, only last year it was 248 terrorist offences that people were arrested for. Now it's going to skew the figures and make it look as if there was a massive terrorist activity.
Yeah, absolutely. And whilst the police did this in a very clever way, really, the protesters were aiming to overwhelm the police. The police in London have got about 500 or 530 cells, and they were trying to get them filled up so the police can operate. What the police did, though, is they brought them into a room and they took their details, and if you could verify their information, off they went and they bailed to come back. Right. The only problem is there's an enormous amount of paperwork for every one of these arrests, right. And then people have got to appear at court. And of course, the courts are overwhelmed. There's people being set for trial dates, not this year, next year.
Yeah.
And so all these officers, I was in central London on Saturday, I've never seen so many officers, Mike. That at one point, 12 carriers full of officers went by on blue lights.
Wow.
They weren't just Met. They were from Durham and Lancashire and Wales. And every one of those officers who's on duty on Saturday is not patrolling our streets, making sure these asylum seekers are behaving, making sure there's no burglaries, robberies, thefts, rapes, and any other crimes, not just in London, but these are officers extracted from across the country. So these silly middle-class champagne socialists who are doing this, they're really bringing woe to ordinary people who just want to live in a safe place.
Yeah, and I'm assuming it's going to be pretty pricey as well for the police bill, for the amount of money that it's going to cost.
That's right, because some of the officers will have been brought in on overtime. Many of the officers will have been brought on their day off, and then the costs when these officers are called to court, either in just the time that they're not on the street patrolling, or they're dragged in off their holidays or rest days to be brought in. And so the vast majority of the officers there, I wouldn't be surprised if it was all of them, would really have better things to do than this.
Yeah.
And all we have here is, again, these silly fools. Apparently, half of them are over 60.
Oh, yeah. Well, I've got a figure here that says that something like 15 were over 80, 112 were over 70, and the rest, mostly, were over 50.
Yeah, my mother used to say there's one thing worse than a fool, and it's an old fool. They're the sort of people who have a ponytail when they've got a ball patch like me and you. And they come out for a Waitrose picnic and they bring out their silly signs. But what they're doing, as I say, their attempts to overwhelm the police will simply cause misery, especially in those working class communities, the people who have to live on a council estate in some rough part of town, who really don't want drug dealers, thieves, vagabonds making their lives a misery. And they'd really like their local police officer to be there to protect them. But instead of being there protecting them, you can see here these characters lie down on the floor.
Yeah.
It takes 6 and 7 officers who then have to detain them. And as I say, it's the vast majority, it's the paperwork and the court time that's just going to mess up the system.
Yeah, absolutely right. Mike, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Sorry it's a bit short this morning. Mike Neville, retired Scotland Yard Detective Chief Inspector. Lots of you got plenty to say continually throughout the course of the morning. This from Anna in Surrey. Morning, Mike. The illegals should be tagged and in bright red boiler suits, cleaning, gardening and improving the environment for taxpayers, then escorted back to secure camps. Any overstayers should be seconded to these camps as well. If they are fleeing war, they will be thankful. No claimant should ever be allowed to bring dependents, and if it was safe enough to leave them, then it's safe enough for them to stay in situ. I think that's a very good point that you make. Coming up, Mel Stride MP, the Shadow Chancellor, is going to be here. Isabel Oakeshott will join us as well, and we'll talk to a former prison officer and a Farmer's Guardian correspondent. This is Talk, back after the news.
I can announce this government will begin the biggest sustained increase in defence spending since the end of the Cold War. Yeah. We will deliver our commitment to spend.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 3 minutes past 9. This is going to be the start of a beautiful week, ladies and gentlemen. It is Monday, 11th of August. The weather is going to be set fair. We're going to be going up into the 30s, it would seem. We're going to have a heat wave, the fourth heat wave of the summer, we are told. It's not really the fourth heat wave of the summer, it's just a bit of summer, isn't it? As you can see from that ridiculous meteorological background that we've got there, this is what they see on other news channels. This is what they tell you it's actually going to look like. It looks like some kind of mad depiction of hell, doesn't it? It's like something that has been dreamed up by Hieronymus Bosch or one of those kind of, middle century painters from the 18th century, or maybe one of those characters from medieval times. This is what's going to be wreaked the havoc across the land. There's going to be pestilence, there's going to be plagues of locusts, there's going to be fires, there's going to be brush fires, wildfires, out of control fires all over the place. Everything's red and yellow and nasty and hot, and it just looks really, really, unfriendly, inhospitable, uninhabitable, some might say. If that's what the depiction of the Sahara Desert is, perhaps, in smoke. I don't know. But for heaven's sake, calm down, will you? Calm down. Costa del Kent, I like that. 0344 499 1000. Let's get a voice note from Simon on the line, Prime Minister.
Keir Starmer and Labour, etc., the whole cabal of Parliament, they got rid of Boris Johnson for a piece of cake. And if they can get rid of him for a piece of cake, surely misleading the House, misleading the country, and I call them lies, surely lying to the House, lying to the country, is an immediate resignation offence. I mean, cake, lies. Cake, lies. Go figure.
Front page of The Sun this morning has got quite a story. Dinghy migrants get dinghy days out. Discounts on the taxpayer. Thank you very much indeed. Migrants arriving on small boats are being offered cut-price dinghy days. You think they've had enough of dinghies, wouldn't you? They can also get all sorts of boat trips around Rotherham. They can also get gym classes. They can get cinema tickets half price, massages half price. All manner of things going on in these migrant hotels up and down the country, including, of course, an awful lot of demonstrations. We've been talking to people who were at the ones in Bristol, the ones in London, the ones in Essex, and, of course, the ones up in Leeds as well. Front page of the Times has got drivers over 70 face eye tests every 3 years. Well, I should think so too. And Daily Mail, 26,000 prisoners freed early by Labour. But perhaps the most galling and most ridiculously damaging headline for Keir Starmer this morning is on the front page of the Daily Telegraph. Starmer hit the £30 billion cost of the Chagos surrender. Official figures reveal the total cost is 10 times higher than the Prime Minister claimed. I'm sorry to say, we've caught him out lying once again. 0344 499 1000. Mel Stride coming up. Isabel Oakeshott. Nadine as well. James Wells' wife is going to join us in the last bit of the show. So we'll get her message to all of you, thanking you for all of the things that you said. 6 minutes past 9. Let's get it on. Now, it must be said that we are not slack here in trying to keep up with the matters of state that go on and the movements of government. Keir Starmer's already put out his first tweet of the day, which doesn't really make much sense, but I'll read it to you if you like, because everybody knows that he loves to put a tweet out around about 8 o'clock this morning. He says this: for far too long, foreign criminals have been exploiting our immigration system, remaining in the UK for months or even years, while their appeals drag on. Yeah, he was responsible for making some of those appeals happen, wasn't he? That ends now. If foreign nationals break the law, they will be deported at the earliest opportunity. Wasn't he one of the guys that signed a letter to keep a man in the country who should have been deported to Jamaica, who later ended up murdering somebody? You know, that was a bit of a prolonged situation. He seems to have changed his tune. Let's see if Yvette Cooper has got any regular updates for us.
Well, we'll provide regular updates for the public at every stage. That's why I'm confirming today that the pilot has now started and the first migrants who arrived on the small boat are now in detention. The transfers to immigration removal centres are underway as we speak, so we won't provide operational details at this point that criminal gangs can simply use and exploit.
Yeah, there haven't been any regular updates since Friday, I'm afraid. It's now Monday. 3 days ago. Anyway, we await one. Mel Stride is here, Shadow Chancellor. Mel, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
So, I don't know where to start this morning. I mean, I think the biggest story against Keir Starmer this morning has got to be this Chagos Islands misleading statement that he put out. He was very sure that any Tory suggestion that the Chagos giveaway would be 30 billion plus was a nonsense, wasn't he?
Yeah, I mean, this is outrageous, Mike. The Prime Minister made it very clear in Parliament, in fact, back in February, that he didn't believe these numbers were anything like we were claiming. We were suggesting at that point, I think, between 9 and 15 billion or thereabouts, and he said that was, quote, wide of the mark, suggesting it was much less than this. Well, due to a freedom of information request that we have put through, we've established that that figure is vastly higher than that, about 35 billion pounds. And the thing is, Mike, this is money that's not there to go on our public services. It's not there to support our brave armed forces. It's simply going to the government of Mauritius, who, amongst other things, are reducing taxes for their citizens at our expense.
Yeah, well, they don't have any income tax now, thanks to all this money we've given them, so it's all great news if you're living in the Chagos Islands and Mauritius, but I'm afraid not very good news for us, because our taxes are going up. I mean, you wrote at the weekend, I think, that there's a sort of big tax bombshell coming with Rachel Reeves, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, we've had the National Institute for Economic and Social Research, that's a very highly respected forecaster, saying that we're heading for about a £40 billion black hole against this government's targets. And that's going to be made up in the autumn, as you say, Mike, principally with tax rises. But how many more tax rises can this economy take? It's one of the reasons why we've got slow growth, is they've taxed the living daylights out of businesses who I'm speaking to almost every day of the week, and they're really struggling. And we're going to get more of this, I'm afraid, in the autumn.
Yes. And, I mean, according to a piece in the Times today on page 2, payroll costs are starting to really bite quite hard into companies in this country who are trying to make a living. Increases in national insurance and increases in the minimum wage have increased costs to a significant extent. And basically, something like 50% of employees in the care and hospitality industries are particularly badly affected. We know, I think, that there's been about something like 29,000 jobs going in the hospitality sector alone, something like 250,000 fewer jobs in the economy since the last budget in November. So heaven help us when she brings out the next one.
Yeah, this is disastrous. In fact, UK Hospitality says that hospitality's lost 83,000 full-time job equivalents as a result of this. Now, the National Insurance, Mike, is not just the hike in the rate that you pay when you employ people, but the threshold, the level of income at which the tax kicks in has been substantially lowered, and that means a lot of lower paid people, younger people going out and getting that first job, perhaps in the leisure sector, you know, siving behind a bar or whatever it may be. They're the people that are bearing the brunt of higher unemployment, and we've seen unemployment going up every single month under this government.
Yeah, exactly right. And I mean, when you look around at everything else that's going on, you know, the migrants problem getting worse and worse and worse, you know, the economy tanking. I mean, we got a story this morning that says the NHS reforms that the government wanted to bring into place have actually now had to be halted because they hadn't costed it. And it's going to cost £1 billion to make all these people redundant that they were going to get rid of from NHS England and various other parts of the NHS. So, I mean, it's almost as though every single plan that they've got in place has turned to dust.
Yeah, I mean, NHS England, as you say, the costs of making people redundant are being totally ignored. What that speaks to is the lack of a plan. I mean, this government came into office saying that they were going to go for growth, growth, growth. They then came in, taxed the living daylights out of businesses that destroyed growth. They had no plan. They didn't know what they were doing. And we're seeing that expressed not just in the economy, not just in what you've raised with the NHS and the costs there, not just with the Chagos, not just with illegal migration or net migration. We're seeing it right across the piece. A government that basically is rudderless and doesn't know what it's doing.
Yeah, and there's no sign of it improving, really, is there?
No, unfortunately, we are heading through a summer of cruel uncertainty for hard-working families up and down the country who are worried about making ends meet and are worried about what's going to happen in the budget in the autumn, where we fully expect there to be some significant tax increases. And as I said earlier, that's just going to be simply raising taxes, which is going to bear down on economic growth still further. It's going to make us that bit much more poor, or poorer than we even were before. And, this is because of the government's choices. They've taken the wrong choices on the economy, and we're all paying the price.
And in terms of what goes on in the Tory party over the course of the summer, obviously we had Kemi Badenoch in here not that long ago talking about where you're coming from in this at this point, but what's the sense in the Tory party of how things are going? Because the tables and the polls are not brilliant for you. What's going on this summer?
So we're a united party, hard at the hard work of opposition, holding the government to account, and that's why I'm on your programme this morning, and Kemi has been so active with the media and out and about and so on. But we recognise that we lost the trust of the British people. We suffered severely at the general election as a consequence, our worst result in our history, and it's going to take time to regain that trust. But we will do that, and we will do that through time, and we'll do it by focusing on the priorities that people have now on the economy. What I am very clear on is that we are going to be the fiscally responsible party that you can trust with the nation's finance, not like Labour, who are messing up the economy, or like Reform, who are dealing with fantasy economics, lots of promises that they just cannot even tell you how they're going to fund or pay for. So we've got to be that sensible, grown-up party, for example, on the economy. It'll take time to get that message through, but that message, I think, is coming through, and I think through time you will see us rise in the polls, but that will take some time, Mike.
It will. Mel, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Mel Stride, Shadow Chancellor there. Let's talk to Isabel Oakeshott, Talk's international editor, because she joins me now. Isabel, very good morning to you.
Good morning. Well, I can see what the Tories are trying to do now, and I've heard this quite a bit from senior, like Conservative grandees, as it were. And, privately they admit that the country just isn't listening to them. Nobody really cares at this point what the Tories have to say about anything. And, that's fairly normal after a government has been after a party has been spectacularly ousted from power. And privately, what they think is that the only thing people are going to listen to them on in the medium term is the economy. And you heard a bit of that from Mel Stride just now, saying, well, Labour's obviously screwing everything up and Reform only produces fantasy economics. Well, good luck to them on that, I say. I'm a bit tired of this lazy argument about Reform's economics just being made up. They don't seem to have much else to cling to, really, do they, the Tories? Point.
No, they don't. And I mean, also, to talk about economic literacy as the former Tory government is rather laughable to me. I mean, I don't think any economic literacy has been involved in either political party that's run this country for most of this century, because all they've done is get us into massive debt, put our taxes up massively, and invented new ways to punish us by bringing more and more people into the country that we have to pay for. Brilliant.
Yeah, it is unbelievable. I know we talk about the small boats crisis every day, all day, every day. And you know what? I don't think that's too much.
No, I don't.
Everybody is talking about. It just beggars belief that the government can't see that none of what it's doing is going to make any difference. I don't understand which bit of them don't get it. One in, one out. Well, we've had 435 in, I think, in the last couple of days alone.
And none out.
One in, one out thing working. It feels like that. You remember that a few weeks ago, the French police did their sort of symbolic, look at us puncturing one rubber dinghy, and never did that again. That's what the one in, one out policy feels like. It feels like here's an announcement of a scheme which we all know, in brackets, really isn't going to work, so that you guys, you silly voters, can think we're doing something. No one's fooled by this. No. And, the outbreak of protests, peaceful protests up and down the country, is quite something to behold. You know, these are, in many places, these were not enormous protests in terms of numbers, but they're the kinds of protests that should really, really unsettle any government, that should send the message to Downing Street that the country is absolutely on a knife edge about this now. You know, I don't know how this evolves. I really fear that something bad will happen, because it's for the government to show leadership, to make people feel that they're being listened to, and simply saying, one in, one out, we're piloting the scheme, but we're not going to give you any details. We're not going to tell you how many people are going to be shifted out under this policy, because it might play into the hands of the people smugglers. Come on, give me strength. You're not telling us that, Home Secretary, because you know the numbers are infinitesimal. And we can already see from this weekend's figure that it's not a deterrent at all.
No, instead we get this kind of performative nonsense of Keir Starmer, you know, trying to make out he's the hard man, you know, putting out these videos and putting out messages to suggest that, you know, we're not going to take it anymore. When I said I was going to lock people up, I meant it, you know, and all this kind of absolute cobblers, quite frankly. I mean, have a look at this one. I don't know if you saw this last Friday. We played this. It's a short little kind of epithet of a migrant transit van, supposedly. This is meant to show that this government is cracking down on illegal migrants. Have a look. There's another sort of Kraftwerk theme there, isn't it, that they've picked up on for the music. And you just think, what is the point of that? You know, is it meant to be frightening? Is it? That's it. That was the video they put out of 3 guys getting out of a minivan carrying their belongings in a blue plastic bag, which they'd obviously been given. And as somebody said to me, they're already being put into a place that was probably more comfortable than where they came from in Calais. So for them, this is hardly detention, is it?
Well, also they know, because word spreads pretty quickly, that statistically they're most likely to be released as soon as the cameras have disappeared.
Yeah, right.
Because of the way our pandering to so-called human rights works. You know, if you're going to do this stuff, you have to really mean it. And the Greeks, I heard you talking about the Greek...
Yeah, in Crete, yeah.
...success. They meant it. You know, they dispatched their foreign minister, the leadership there, to send out a very, very clear message. And they weren't at all embarrassed about it. They just said, look, we're going to make this a really, really hostile place for you to rock up. And guess what? It actually worked. But unfortunately, our lot just don't seem to understand this. I don't think this is sustainable for another 6 months, actually, never mind 4 years. Something has got to happen. Something will happen. I don't know what it is, but I do think the government is going to be forced into a different approach.
They're going to have to do something drastic, I fear, because, you know, the sheer numbers are so overwhelming now. You know, the front page of the Express has got a story saying that some reform councillors, particularly in Kent, are concerned because it looks as though now they're gearing up to actually buy up entire streets to put migrants in places like Folkestone, in places like Thanet, you know, in parts of Kent, which are obviously quite close to Dover, because they are trying to get them out of hotels, but the alternative might actually be worse.
Well, I mean, again, this is just such stupidity. It's such absolute lunacy to think, oh, well, the migrant hotels have become a real focus for public discontent. So here's what we'll do. We'll put them in private housing and we'll bunch it all together along a street. People are not going to calm down about this or feel any less, quite rightfully indignant and frankly furious about it, because they've been moved out of hotels into private accommodation. And the reason is, I get that private accommodation doesn't look quite so ludicrously luxurious as some of the hotels we've shown on this station. But the truth and the real problem is that the British people are being pushed down the list by this policy for housing. And, you know, I'm quite regularly getting emails from people who have been told, you know, it's going to take you years to get any social housing. And people aren't stupid. They know why this is, because other communities, as it were, being prioritised. I've heard of a shocking case of an Afghan couple who speak no English whatsoever, which begs the question, if they've come here under the so-called Arab scheme, how could they possibly have been doing much to help the British government and the British Armed Forces if they can't speak a word of English? And they've been fast-tracked into much-needed social housing within a few weeks of their arrival here, while local people are being deprioritised. That, along with hundreds of pounds of universal credit going direct into their bank accounts, while their rent is paid for directly by the British taxpayer. This is just totally wrong. And on so many counts, people are beginning to feel, well, I think they've been feeling it for some time now, that it's all topsy-turvy. The government has got this all upside down.
Yeah.
They are protecting the rights of all the wrong people. You see that again with this ridiculous story. I mean, it'd be almost funny that shopkeepers who are trying desperately to do something, anything, to stop the rapid exit of their goods from their shops in the hands of shoplifters, are now being told, oh, you can't put pictures of this from CCTV in your shop window because of GDPR. I mean, what?
I know. Yeah, they're saying, it might be some kind of breach of data protection rules.
I mean, really couldn't give a flying monkey.
No. I know, it's incredible.
Anyway.
But it is, it's like everything's upside down. It's like metaphor for Britain for me was yesterday. I was driving back from Sussex and I passed 3 or 4 different points at which I noticed that they've installed a whole load of electric car charging points, in all different parts of South London. And guess what? Not one of them had a car on it. Not one. But don't worry, we'll take a load of space, we'll build these things. So no doubt, probably either the local council's paying for it or the Department of Net Zero or something's paying for it. But nobody's using them because nobody wants them.
Just absolutely ridiculous. And then there's the Chagos Islands deal, which I really think that is such an important story of government cover-up and lies and the kind of thing that really sickens people. As we now know, and all of us, I think, long suspected, this deal is much dirtier and much more disadvantageous for the British people than the government wanted to admit. There is some hope out there, and that is that a future Reform government would rip up this deal, and they would do so pretty aggressively. They have said, we will tell the Mauritian government, we will shut down your embassy, we will stop issuing visas and basically declare war on this deal. I'm not here to be a sort of walking, talking advert for reform, but hearing that this morning did cheer me up, I must say.
Yeah, absolutely right. It's good to hear somebody with a mind of their own, to be honest. Let's talk about Nicola Sturgeon for a minute, though, because you wrote a piece in the Telegraph at the weekend. We've got a couple of clips. She's got a new book out. And I used to know, I think you and I have spoken about her before. I used to know her quite well back in the early days of sort of the early 2000s, when she was Alex Salmond's deputy. Have a look at this is what she said about her husband Peter's arrest.
What was it like when you saw Peter being led away?
I don't really have a clear memory of that, because I think I'd gone upstairs to kind of get myself ready, and so I don't really...
But the idea of him being taken out of your family home
so
by the police...
don't know, and I genuinely don't know whether the fact that I don't have a clear image of that in my head is because I didn't witness it, or that I have kind of somehow blocked it out. It wasn't until I got to my mum and dad's that I saw the pictures of my house looking like a murder scene, effectively.
It's a strange interview. We'll play another clip about her sexuality in a minute, but she's an odd woman, really, isn't she?
She is, and I sort of feel almost conflicted of just being negative about her, because I think, she has done extraordinary things. I happen to think that they're pretty much all the wrong things, but she was a very sort of strong and impressive leader during the pandemic. And I don't mean that I'm at all impressed by the measures she took, but she certainly had Downing Street on the back foot a lot of time. And, from my own reporting of the inside story of the pandemic, the extent to which Boris Johnson and his crew were kind of running in circles to avoid being outmaneuvered by Nicola Sturgeon politically is sort of quite impressive. But she got such a strange figure, doesn't she? I mean, imagine, it is odd not being able to remember such a moment as your husband being arrested. But really what matters, and what I was writing about in the Telegraph at the weekend, is her legacy. I mean, she was just a total disaster and did dreadful, dreadful things in her time as First Minister of Scotland. I mean, Scotland got quite demonstrably worse in so many respects. You can look at the extent to which NHS waiting lists exploded, the extent to which, you know, the government of Scotland just pulled out of international education league tables because they were making Scotland look so bad. The rocketing drug deaths, you know, so many indices which just cast that SNP administration in a terrible light. I don't think it's the last we've heard of Nicola Sturgeon. You know, you and I know, because we spent many years, I grew up in Scotland, I almost consider it home, really, that Scotland is quite short of totemic figures, big celebrities. And I don't think she's going to totally disappear off the scene. She's obviously got other things she's planning.
I guess so. It all unravelled so quickly as well after that terrible interview she did with ITV, when she suddenly, you could almost see in real time her thought process going, oh God, I've just said it. I've just said the one thing that I shouldn't have said, that basically, you know, there are circumstances under which a trans woman is not a woman. And that was it, the end, over.
Yeah. I mean, and then there's a whole fascinating dimension of her relationship with Alex Salmond, and how that, you know, because she was sort of a protege of his, and then that all went absolutely sour. I just want to add one anecdote about Nicola Sturgeon. She's one of the first politicians that I, as a very young political reporter, had lunch with one-to-one. And in the Grand League table of the probably hundreds of ministers and, you know, senior figures that I've been privileged enough to have one-to-one time with over the years, she was the hardest work. I mean, she's right up there in my top 5 worst ever lunches with a politician. It was really hard going, to the point that I actually remember quite clearly where the restaurant was and just how much I was looking forward to just getting the bill and getting out there.
Right. There's a podcast in that, the 5 worst lunches you've ever had.
Theresa May is another one.
Yeah, I bet. Have a look at this. This is her being asked about her sexuality.
You write in the book, I have never considered sexuality, mine own included, to be binary. What do you mean by that?
I mean what it says. It's just my view of the world and life and the way people are. If you're about to ask me, am I making some big revelation? No. Am I putting labels on myself? No. That's how I see the world.
Might we see you in a relationship with a woman?
I'm just out of a marriage, so I'm not rushing into a relationship with anyone anytime soon. I'm enjoying being my own person for a while.
But not ruling it out?
I'm not contemplating, you know, sort of anything of that nature. I'm just enjoying life.
I'm starting to want to leave the room and I'm not even in it, you know? Just kind of going, what?
Yeah, cringe. I mean, there had long been speculation about this, hadn't there? You know?
And she hasn't done anything to stop that, really, has she?
Well, quite the reverse. I mean, she didn't rule anything out, and that's fine. That's all up to her. But it does cast a new light on her unbelievable championing of a woke and frankly pretty creepy LGBTQIA whatever blah agenda in the Scottish education system, and also through the legal system. You know, she now here we have it. While she was married all that time, actually she saw her sexuality, or sexuality in general, as non-binary, which definitely gives us some insight into why she pushed that agenda so hard. Ultimately, it did for her.
Yeah, it really did. Fascinating stuff. Good to talk to you, Isabel Oakeshott. Thank you very much indeed. Talks international editor. We may never talk about Nicola Sturgeon again, so I just thought it might be worth playing some of that. Let's get a voice note from Sharon on the dinghies.
Morning, Mike. You've just made me laugh. Giving out dinghy rides to people that's come over supposedly traumatised by having to come over on a dinghy. I just can't make that up. Oh my God. Have a good day, Mike. Sharon from Yorkshire.
Very good. Thank you very much indeed, Sharon from Yorkshire. Charles in Glasgow says, morning, Mike. Great show as always. I thought the Met Office was marketing 1970s lava lamps from that graphic of the weather. I know. This one from Tony. With reference to the Chagos deal, please don't let anyone from the Labour government near the Ukraine ceasefire talks. The dopey buggers will give the Isle of Wight to Russia. I mean, they are literally the worst negotiators of all time. Starmer recalled the Cabinet for his ridiculous Gaza recognition, says William. Why, oh why, is Starmer not recalling Parliament to debate and stop the boat crisis? How are people coping on the South Coast with the invasion and across towns in the UK? Have a great week. It's a very good point. Here's one from Glenn, who says, Mike, I wonder if the colours on the weather map for 32 degrees are the same as 40 degrees as we had 2 years ago when they said the UK was on fire. Glenn from Burning Leeds. It looks like a scene from Mordor in Lord of the Rings. It really does. Look at it. It's ridiculous. Totally bonkers mad. This is Talk.
They asked what was happening with the healthcare, and they said, oh, don't worry, to make sure that we don't run up NHS waiting lists, we've given all the migrants nice private healthcare. And everyone was like, wait, hang on, so they're getting, you know, posh Bupa or whatever, whilst I'm calling the doctors at 8 a.m. begging for an appointment. How's that fair?
I know.
And they said, oh, but it's great for you because it means that they won't be taking up any space in your NHS.
The logic of this stuff is appalling, isn't it? And I mean, how many millions is this costing? Because if they handed out 1 million NHS passes, and so 1 million people are accessing even what? £100 across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker,
on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 9:37. I'm Mike Graham. James Wells' wife's going to be joining us in a little while. Nadine is going to be in to talk to us. He's got a big piece in the Daily Express today, page 13, his final column. Obviously, James passed away last week, and we were all very sad about that. But we've been celebrating his life here as well as we go throughout the rest of the course of the year. Morning, Mike. That sky image of the Earth looks like a political hellscape. Politics dominated by Labour, Liberals, and the odd green blob up north, says Pauline Hitchin. And one from David. Mike, the government should do what the Greek government did when I was in Crete in May. They put them in compounds and gave them a tent, and that was it. Yeah, well, I dare say. Let's get a voice note from Gaz.
Morning, Mike. What is it about all these warnings about the temperature's going to be 30 degrees? Every summer or every year, people are jet setting halfway across the world to get into temperatures that are way above that. World's gone crazy. Cheers, pal.
I know, it totally has. Gaz, enjoy the weather. It's looking a bit hazy out there now, but it's going to be 32, they say, in London. Probably not as hot everywhere in the country, but it's going to be a nice week. It's going to be very nice. Let's talk now to Emily Ashworth, digital editor at Farmers Guardian. Farmers in this country get together every year and try and celebrate something. It's not easy to celebrate at the moment because, of course, life is not as easy if you're a farmer at the moment as it used to be, particularly with some of the inheritance taxes which are coming to many of them. But let's find out what's going on in the world of farming. Emily, very good morning to you.
Good morning, thank you for having me.
Not at all. Good to see you. You all recently kind of celebrated a week of sort of trying to produce and promote British farmers' goods. Yeah, so our annual celebration, 24 Hours in Farming, took place last week, and it was our 10th anniversary, and it's just a chance to kind of, excuse the pun, fling open the farm gates to showcase what actually goes on in farming, because I think a lot of the time farmers don't tell their own story. It's always told by somebody else, whether that's the media or people on social media. So this was a chance to kind of showcase the realities. Yeah. And how much harder has it been for farmers since obviously the announcement of that inheritance tax and no sign really, whenever I've spoken to farmers, of the government changing their position on it? It's really difficult for various reasons, because farmers have planned their entire lives around inheritance tax, and then all of a sudden that's completely changed. So not only does that change the family dynamic, it kind of prohibits planning. They can't plan for the future. Yeah. But also, what's really important is mental health. Yeah. We need a kind of strong agricultural workforce. Food security is national security. We've seen that with, even if we turn the clock back, whether that's World War II or more recent events such as Ukraine or even severe weather. So we need that support for our British farmers, and yeah, it's really there's a cloud hanging over us at the minute. Yes, exactly. And I mean, it's kind of in abeyance at the moment, isn't it? It's not really going anywhere. What's the latest situation as far as you're aware? In terms of inheritance tax? Yeah. So far, nothing has changed, and I think that is the worry. And it kicks in, what, in 27, is it? April next year, yeah. Yeah. Oh, 26, so, okay. Yeah. So we've not got a lot of time, and actually, our part in this is looking at how we can actually provide that support and look at what the possibilities are. I think a lot of people in the industry are still really hoping that there will be some sort of change, and that doesn't mean kind of abolishing it. It means either looking at raising that threshold, right, which would then kind of secure the smaller family farm, which is the real worry in the industry. Yes, because I think some people certainly don't disagree with the principle of it. It's just the way that they've tried to kind of administer it, isn't it? Yeah, and I think, like I've just mentioned, it's kind of that threshold, and it feels like there's such a misunderstanding of the impact this could actually have, because this will impact, further down that supply chain and the end consumer. We're looking at probably food price hikes and things like that. So I think it's that misunderstanding and a lack of willingness to get out on farms and actually speak to the people that this is going to impact, and then shape the policy around that. Yeah. And in terms of prices these days, I mean, obviously people complain that prices in supermarkets are constantly going up. What's the effect been of national insurance, of, minimum wage, that kind of thing on farmers? Again, that workforce aspect of it all,
farms, which I think it sounds a bit of a silly thing to say, doesn't it? But they are businesses.
Yeah.
And of course, people do it because they love what they do. But these are businesses, and that ripple effect from things like national insurance, you know, we employ a lot of people. So it's a knock-on effect, whether that's people on farms, whether that's, you know, feed merchants and suppliers.
Yeah.
It's going to have a big impact. And like I said, people won't be hiring either. So there's that side of it as well. It's just very, very stalling.
Right. And so hard to keep prices down, really.
Yeah, yeah.
And that is obviously a problem for everybody. Well, listen, Emily, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Emily Ashworth, digital editor at the Farmers Guardian. We're going to take a couple of calls and we're going to do some voice notes as well. This from Dave in South Gloucestershire. The ever-increasing demonstrations should be a clear message to the government and local authorities that the public has had enough of having their communities torn apart, their country spoiled and their hard-earned money spent on housing, feeding, luxury treats and items, and the rest on these characters, and the time has come to act. However, all we hear is talk, gimmicky, ineffective schemes and warnings against British citizens. All the while the numbers keep on rising at an alarming rate. The lefty lawyers and big immigration businesses, the hoteliers and the landlords keep making millions from this disastrous situation. Nothing is happening, and the longer nothing happens, the higher the likelihood that matters will seriously boil over. At that point, if Labour allows it to happen, we will see their real attitude to Britain and its people by the action it takes, says Dave in South Gloucester. Let's talk to Herbie, who's in Harrow. Hi, Herbie.
Yes, good morning, Mike.
Good morning, sir. What can I do
Mike,
for you?
the local councils that are giving all these freebies away, have they asked the electorate or the constituents, can we spend your money on these people that you've paid in?
Of course they have.
Because they're not going to be paying anything. They've not gone to a task to ask the constituents, can we spend your money on free illegal giving? No, of course they haven't.
No.
So what right have they got to spend it? What right have they got to give it away?
Yeah. Yeah, they haven't got a right to give it away, in my view. I don't think they've got any mandate whatsoever to do that.
Well, then something needs to be done about it. I mean, so if this money's then they should pay it back. If they want to give this money away, let it come out of their pocket, not the constituents.
Yeah.
Pay
Well, this is the thing, because apart from anything else, even if they get, say, half-price gym membership, the rest of the money that they spend is also given to them by us. So they haven't really got any of their own money.
It'd be interesting to know exactly how much money the council have actually spent on these freebies for illegals, not legal people, illegals that come over when people are struggling to pay their rates.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. It's a very good point, Herbie. Thank you very much indeed. They haven't got permission, have they? It's as simple as that. Let's get a voice note from Darren.
Morning, Mike. Darren from Suffolk. Great show as ever. Do you think the message has got back to Africa and all other parts of the world to say Britain is open? Just go there. Can you imagine if the whole of Africa, the whole of the Middle East, went to France and got in a boat, and all of a sudden you've got 50 boats a day, 100 boats a day, and you've got maybe 50,000 people a day arriving at our shores? What would we do then? At what stage do our Navy say you're not coming in? There has to be a plan. There's just nothing.
Well, you remember when somebody got up in the House of Commons and said, you know, potentially it's 8 billion people. I think, was it Priti Patel or Suella Braverman? One of the two. Could be 8 billion people potentially who want to come to this country if there are no restrictions on it. And that's right. Bumped into a local estate agent, says Ian in Essex this morning. He said that migrant HMOs are a real thing, and if you could get one in your street, the worst that could happen is you won't be able to sell your house if you live next door to one. The best that can happen is you lose thousands if it's near you. Great. Marvellous. Something else to look forward to. Morning, Mike. I wish people would stop referring to the Chagos Islands deal. I always thought a deal had to benefit both sides, says Stephen Beckenham. Yeah. Mike, where is a vote of no confidence in Keir Starmer and his government, says David from Harold Wood. I know, it really is mad, isn't it? Coming up, we're going to speak to Nadine Lamont Brown, who is James Whale's wife. He died, of course, a week ago today. And Nadine wants to come in and say thank you to all of you for all of your wonderful messages. Also today in the Express, James Whale's final column. Here's my very last word on the matter. Hold those you love close, and remember, Britain is still the finest country in the world. This is Talk. of free stuff.
The nail bars, the construction sites, the care homes, the barbers, the places where people are, in some instances, employing workers illegally. They should be being raided. The employers should be being arrested and fined in accordance with the current laws. But the idea that you'd have to have an ID card, I don't think will make any material difference to that challenge. It seems to me to be very expensive, impractical and overbearing on law-abiding Brits who don't deserve to have that.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 9:48. I'm Mike Graham with you, of course, for another 10 minutes or so. Julie Hartley-Brewer will be along after 10. Enough is enough now, says this message. Listening to this day in, day out has just made me think about taking my wife and my 6-year-old daughter to self-defence classes so that they're prepared for any sort of attack against them. I would never forgive myself if anything was ever to happen to them when I was not around. I had families with young children to look into this also. Yeah, well, a lot of people pretty worked up about all that. As indeed would James Welby, if he was still with us. Nadine Lamont Brown is with us, though, James's wife. Nadine, great to see you.
Yeah, good to be here.
Thanks for coming in. I saw you probably a couple of weeks ago, because we saw each other just about 10 days before James passed away last Monday. How are you?
I'm managing. It's difficult, but the first few days were awful. You know, and it was more of a shock than I thought it was. I'd expect it, but no, it was still a shock, and then you feel like you've been hit by a bus or something.
Yeah, well, we were all really surprised, I think, at how shocked we were by it all, because even having seen him, you know, he was so alive when we saw him, when we came down, and we weren't sure. Remember the day before, it was just before he went into the hospice, and we weren't even sure if he'd be well enough to see us. And we ended up sitting there for 2 hours.
And having a lovely chat.
Having a great chat. And a laugh. And really funny. And he seemed so vibrant, you know.
And he was right like that up until the Friday, and then it was just the last couple of days he just went to sleep a bit then. He was just a bit unconscious, but it was wonderful being in the hospice, the change from when he was at home and me just trying to look after him, and then getting him in there and the care he got. It did really perk him up.
It did.
They say it's a hospice hug effect, they call it.
Yeah, because they can do all sorts of things, and he was able to be in the bed properly, and he was kind of in a chair, wasn't he, when he was at home?
Yeah, he was being a bit stubborn. He just refused to go in the hospital bed when he was at home, so yeah, it was much better for him.
We were laughing as well towards the end of the week last week, because we said, you know, he'd have loved the fact that he was trending on Twitter all day on the Monday, and the fact that he had a great big obit piece in the Sun and the Times, you know, and he was such an amazing character.
Well, I think he spent 50 years trying to make people hate him, and he would be devastated by all the love, all the outpouring of nice comments.
But they really did, and as I said when I spoke to people here, you know, he had such a wide range of friends as well, didn't he?
He did. I mean, one of the reasons I wanted to come on this morning was just say thank you to all the people who've given really nice tributes, and even like when we were at the hospice, there are a couple of handwritten letters arrived from people who'd heard he was there, that he'd maybe spoken to once in 1970. He'd been kind to them, and they felt the need to write in. So thank you to everyone who
it's been quite a remarkable week, really, I suppose, and from the point of view of it's still going on, I suppose, because he's got a piece in the Express today, page 13, his final sort of column, I suppose, if you like, and it's typical of James. The picture of him is actually in the hospice, I think, isn't it?
It is. Yeah.
And it's great. I read it just this morning, and he talks a bit about how he was feeling and how hard it was, and he talks about you, of course, and he talks about you know, what it was like to be him. And I don't think there's nobody like him, really, is there?
No,
I mean, I don't
he
want to
actually
go
enjoyed writing
over the top and being sort of, you know, all lovey-like about it, but there really wasn't anybody like him.
No, he's a big hole to fill. It's just I miss him terribly, but he did really enjoy writing that sort of piece.
And he was able to actually do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was. He was thinking of making a little video, but he decided against that in the end, like a something to be played at his funeral or whatever. But he decided not to do that in the end.
Because we've still got, I mean, we played it out last week, your final sort of podcast, where his voice is not strong particularly, but you can still hear it. And we played it out, and that was very hard actually to listen to, because it's difficult when, I suppose, I don't want to get too maudlin about it, but when you're...
No, because I'll cry, so don't
No, I don't
cry.
want to make you cry, honestly. I don't want to make myself cry either. But just being with somebody and watching them, you know, as they go away, effectively.
And it was also so cruel for James that it was his voice that went, because obviously in your line of work, your voice is your main tool, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it was... He found it quite distressing that he couldn't really talk properly.
Really talk, yeah. But he was an incredible man, because we talked about it again last week, I think it was nearly 3 years ago, where you came in and we filmed that sort of tribute to James Wells. We called it A Lifetime of Late Night, I think it was called, and which I'm sure will play out again. And even then, he was worried that he might not make it to Christmas.
I know.
Do you remember?
But even in the last few days, so on the Saturday morning, they said to me, "You've probably only got a few hours now."
Yeah.
And then, you know, Monday morning, we're still there.
Right.
He didn't want to go anywhere. He was...
Well, funnily enough, I think it was last Monday, I'd said to our boss, Denny, I said, well, I was thinking about whether we should go back and visit, because the last thing he said to us was, will you come and see me again next week? Which we were going to do, you know, but because you never knew with James. He was so rambunctious that, you know, you could have expected him to be
totally
around.
optimistic right to the end.
Yeah, absolutely. And so... You know, obviously you, I thought, you were incredible that day as well, because you laughed along with him, and, you know, every now and again if he said something that somebody might have said, that's a bit weird. You were just very good with him. What was it like for you to be caring for somebody like that?
It was mainly fun, to be honest. I mean, he bless him, he just apologised to me all the time. I'm so sorry that you're having to do this. And I was like, really, don't say sorry to me. It's fine.
Yeah.
It's an honour to be able to look after you. But he made it fun as much as possible. I mean, obviously some bits are really tough, you know, and that's where the hospice came in, was so great. Just those last few days, I didn't have to worry about doing the changing the beds and the medications and things. I was able to just sit there beside him and chat to him and just be a wife.
And just make his life just easier. And, you know, he obviously loved you very much. You could tell that by just your interaction.
I think I'm very lucky that he loved me more than anyone has ever loved me. Don't see you set me off now.
Sorry. So, but I mean, lots of people listening to this will have loved ones who've got cancer, and who, I mean, I think you've been an inspiration to them as well, because, you know, they see how you dealt with that, you know, because it was a very public kind of, you know, situation, wasn't it? Because the podcast was great. Did you ever think about, I mean, whose idea was the podcast?
It was James's idea.
Was it?
Yeah, and then I just think, why would anyone want to listen to this? But it did. I think a lot of people said they found it really helpful. Yeah. So I was thinking about maybe just trying to carry on doing a little once a month one, just me, about bereavement process and the practicalities of that, you know, just where you go to get your death certificates and all this kind of thing. Just
there's an awful lot of that kind of practical stuff, isn't there? Which is
like other people going through it, just saying, God, this week I feel like this, and I'm thinking about doing that. I don't know whether it would be a good idea.
I'm sure people would like it, because I used to listen to the podcast, and, you know, just because it was, I found it fascinating, even if it wasn't, because I'm not
probably mainly because it was James, though.
No, not really. No, I actually really enjoyed the way that you both interacted, and I just thought the subject matter was fascinating. You know, I happen to know you guys, but, you know, I would have listened to it anyway, because it was really, it was quite uplifting in a way. It wasn't particularly sad, you know.
No, we had the odd sad episode, but mainly mainly we were just getting on with life as best you can in that situation.
Yeah, and so in the final sort of hours, were you? I mean, did he? You said since the Friday he kind of deteriorated a little bit.
Yeah, so I just
was sleeping quite a lot, wasn't he?
Yes, he just, and they doctors did say that, you know, he was in more pain. They said, we can increase your pain medication, but it will make you be more sleepy. And he just said, like, I'd like that now. You know, just would like to be more asleep. So I just sat with him. They let me sleep in the hospice with him. Right. So I just stayed with him the whole time, and just stroked his hand, chatted to him.
You hold his hand.
Yeah. So it was marvellous. I am doing a little bit of a fundraiser for the hospice.
Yes, because I wanted to talk to you about that, because he had said to us when we were there, you know, a lot of the people working there volunteer, and they don't actually get paid at all, and they really don't get much money from anywhere, which is extraordinary.
No, it's all run by people just, like, you know, doing cake sales and sponsored walks and things, and it's such an amazing place. So
it's hard to believe. So is it not part of an NHS sort of?
No, they get like 18% of their funding comes from the government, and then the other. Oh, we can't do the maths on that. The other large part has to come from just from donations and things like that. So I'm going to do a bit of volunteering, not now, but in a sort of bit of time I'll go and be one of the people that can help out there. But in the meantime, I'm throwing myself into just trying to raise a bit of money for them as a thank you for what they did for us.
Yeah, they did a wonderful thing. And did you talk about, his death before he died with him? Did you talk about,
yes,
what he would
did.
like for
we
his
did.
funeral
and
and
that's
all
made
of that?
things so much easier for me because I know exactly what I'm doing. I haven't got to sort of thrash things out with people or anything. It's just like, this is what James wanted, this is what we're doing.
Right.
And he quite enjoyed planning his funeral, actually. I think he's as much as you can.
Yeah.
He's thrown in a few little funny bits and whatever. So
yeah, I mean, so did he ever say how he wants to be remembered?
I don't know if he did actually. I think he just would like to have been remembered in some way. Just
right. I was watching. I can't remember what I was watching, but I think it might have just been one of them. So many clips of him, because I mean, when you do what he did, there's plenty of clips. You could be watching them for ages. And he said, "I just want to be remembered by people as oh yeah, I remember that bloke." Kind of an off-the-cuff thing where they go, oh yeah, I remember him. I saw him doing something once. It was quite funny. So it wasn't like he wanted to be all grandiose about it. He just wanted to be somebody who kind of you went, oh yeah, I think I know who that is.
He's that nasty bloke who used to hang up on people.
Yeah, I still love the way he did that. Still think that was
and it's so different to the real James, who was just such a kind, gentle...
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, that was a little bit of his personality as well. He couldn't have put that whole thing on, but...
oh, he was such a lovely man.
Really, really.
Yeah.
I mean, and most of the